Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto inherits Hashirama powers and abilities. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Legendaryjeager97 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. The Warring States period was once an extremely deadly time in history as conflicts perpetually arose between the nations which ruled the lands. Each nation was always fighting for more rights and land, but in order to see their goals accomplished, they would need to rent the military might of the various shinobi clans that roamed the war-torn. Even amongst all of the shinobi clans, there were two that were synonymous with the Warring States period. These two clans came to be feared far and wide as the two strongest. Senju and Uchiha. The two most powerful clans in all the world, only rivaled by the Uzumaki. Each clan had developed a deep hatred towards the other, and when one nation hired one of them, the rival nation would hire the other. It was a never-ending cycle of death, hatred and revenge that had blossomed between these people. Eventually, after countless years of battle, two men arose to the forefront of their respective clans, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Both were hailed as the strongest by their peers and enemies alike, but even with all of the power at their disposal, they still couldn't protect what mattered to them the most: their siblings. It was through the deaths of their siblings that had prompted a fateful meeting between the two as children, which in turn started a budding friendship. The more frequently they began to meet, the more they began to open up to each other, and each explained a dream they wanted to see come to fruition. A world where peace reigned and children lived full lives instead of losing them prematurely. Unfortunately, a friendship during this era of constant fighting could only last so long. Each boy eventually came to learn that their best friend was their clan's most hated enemy, and before long each boy began to fight one another. The hope these two had represented was severed, and the cycle began once more as the Senju clan and the Uchiha clan began their long-standing fighting once more. The fighting had begun to lessen between the two mighty clans after a decade of non-stop battles. Both leaders began to notice that their fellow members were starting to grow weary of spilling any more blood. It was at this point that Hashirama decided to make the first move and offered a truce to his longtime friend and rival, stating it was time to end this conflict. The Uchiha patriarch was the only person still pushing for conflict, as he was still bitter about losing his last remaining sibling. It was only after one more fight between both clan leaders and a demonstration of Hashirama's will, showing he was willing to kill himself in compensation for Izuna's death, that had finally swayed the Uchiha. A truce was soon signed between both leaders as Senju and Uchiha were now allies. Soon after the initial signing did another take place, as the leaders of the two clans went to meet with the daemon of Hai no Kuni, Land of Fire. It was here in this land where the dream of two boys was finally going to see the light of day. All they had ever worked towards had finally come true. Now no more children had to suffer. Several years after the founding of Konoha, it had finally been accomplished. It was on this day, January 1st, that everything would change for the better. Not only for shinobi clans, but for any who wished to make a home in their new village. Konohagakure no Sato, village hidden in the leaves, the village that would change things. No longer were the two boys turned men chasing a dream, it was a reality. And they were living in it. Senju Hashirama had been chosen to be the Shodai Hokage, first fire shadow by his fellow peers. However, even with his selection and the creation of the village he only saw as a child, it paled in comparison to what he had just witnessed and what he was currently feeling. Uzumaki Mito, his wife, soulmate, best friend, confidant, his other half had just given birth to his son, his legacy Senju Naruto. He would get to see his legacy grow alongside his village. 4 years later. 4 years had come and gone since the completion of the village, making Konoha 4 years old, along with one Naruto Senju. He stood at 3 feet even, and while anyone with a pair of eyes could easily recognize him for being the son of Mito and Hashirama, there were some differences. He had been born with his father's black hair that was beginning to show signs of growth, but if one looked close enough they could make out a darkish crimson hue as well. No doubt that was inherited from his mother. Another thing he gained from his mother were his violet eyes, but unlike Mito, who did not have pupils, his eyes did. The light color adorned his skin, which was similar to Mito's as well, and an oval face rounded out his physical traits. Today was the day he would receive the gift his father had been promising him: training. He wanted to be like his father and mother, and today he would be his first step towards that goal. Naruto. A voice snapped him out of his excited daze. He turned around to see the face of his father Hashirama walking towards him with a very warm look in his eyes. "Hello To-chan." Naruto greeted his father with a smile and bow. "What are you going to teach me?" he asked the man called the god of shinobi and father. Hashirama merely smiled at his overenthusiastic son and ruffled up his hair. "Before we go into that, I need to ask you a question that will shape how I train you," he said to the boy. Naruto scowled at his father for messing up his hair and swatted his hand away. He began to calm himself so as to not get angry. It was a lesson taught to him early on, take control of your emotions, don't let them control you. It was taught to him by his uncle. After calming himself he looked his father in the eye. What is your question, Tu-chan? He asked his father. Hashirama smiled at him. What would you like to learn? The man asked him. Hashirama was patiently waiting for his son's response, and while waiting he had noticed how quickly his son had calmed himself. I'm very proud of you, Naruto. He thought to himself. Finally, after a full minute of pondering, Naruto had his answer. I want to learn a bit of everything. He said honestly. The answer had honestly surprised him a bit, but he regained his composure and inwardly smiled to himself. It seems he wants to be like me, Hashirama thought to himself. So you want to be like your Tu-chan? Said Hashirama as ideas were already filling his mind as to what he could teach, along with some other teachers as well, to his son. What do you mean be like you? Questioned the young Senju. The man grinned. Simple really, Naruto, I'm skilled in many shinobi aspects. And I'm at least proficient and have an understanding in those I don't. Proclaimed the Senju leader with a bit of smugness. Wow. Was the only word that came to the youngster's mind. He was in awe. Since you wish to learn a bit of everything, we will start small and gradually go up. I want you to be the best son, and in order to be the best only the best will teach you. Stated the Shodai and knew the next question his son would ask. It was literally 2 little words. Like who? Naruto asked his father. Hashirama grinned. Well, your Kachan already laid claim to your Fuinjutsu training, but in order to know more about that you will need to speak with her. Depending on what your affinities are, either Tobirama or myself will teach you ninjutsu, which might also correspond to either of us teaching you our personal style of taijutsu. He answered the young boy. Really? So depending on what affinity I have will determine what taijutsu either of you teach me? He said eagerly. Hashirama nodded. That's right, but that won't be for a few years. Jinjutsu will be taught by someone who excels in the art even more than me. Hashirama stated and couldn't blame his son for the look of disbelief. Who's better at it than you? He asked his father with wide eyes. My baby sister, Tomka-chan. He said as he praised his younger sibling. Naruto was clearly surprised. It was his aunt. She's the best there is in the village. He asked excitedly. Hashirama nodded again. That's right. He told the boy. Cool. Said Naruto as his family was really strong. You got that right. Grinned Hashirama. I'm not sure who would be suitable in teaching you Kinjutsu, as I don't stick to one particular weapon. We'll just worry about that for later and focus on what we have at hand. The man stated aloud. That would be a tricky thing to decide as he couldn't think of anyone else to teach him. Okay, so what are we going to be doing first? Naruto asked as he began rubbing his hands together in anticipation. The older Senju grinned. Chakra control, shuriken jutsu, and physical training. He told the boy. Naruto cocked his head to the side. He asked in confusion, which earned him a laugh from his dad. 2 years later. 2 more years had passed in the blink of an eye for the village. Naruto, who is currently 6 years old, was awaiting his teacher. Much had been accomplished in the last 2 years for him in regards to his training with his father, and he was waiting to learn something new today. Flashback. Naruto was absolutely giddy with excitement as today would be the day his father taught him something he had yearned for once he had seen it. Ninjutsu. It was understandable as to why he was so hyped up as doing nothing, but chakra control and physical exercises tended to get old fast. Oh, he knew those things were important, but he had wished they were like the other art he learned. Shuriken jutsu. His father had actually taught him a few techniques that did not require the use of chakra or elemental chakra, but instead relied more on control and skill. He was satisfied when he learned something and then applied it to a real-life situation. However, right now he was getting annoyed. What's taking him so long? Naruto knew how to be patient as his mother had all but ingrained manners into his mind and body. Many had stated that while looking more like his father, he thought more like his mother. It was a perfect balance of mind and power. Finally getting tired of waiting for his father, he got up off the ground and went to the only place he felt his father would be at. The Hokage office. Hokage office. Hashirama was grinning like a loon while looking at his brother. The reason for this was quite simple. He had somehow won a bet against his brother and there he was doing his paperwork for him. And the best part was that the bet was for a few years. Looks like my gambling luck is on the rise. Hashirama said to himself. What was that? Tobirama growled. Nothing. Hashirama said innocently. Remind me again why I'm doing this for you? Tobirama asked as he gave his brother the evil eye before looking away and signing a few papers. The older brother just brushed off the glare like it was nothing and chuckled. Simple really, Toby. You lost a bet and by losing you're allowing me time to train my son while spending time with my family. Plus, I'm grooming you to take this position when I step down. He told his brother. Tobirama just sighed in exhaustion, but if one looked close enough they could see the small smile that tugged on his lips. He currently had no children of his own, so his nephew Naruto was like a son to him, and if by doing this would benefit him, then he would persevere. Plus it did have its upside. Even I will get to teach him something depending on how today goes. Tobirama inwardly mused to himself before snapping out of it and looking down only to start scowling again. Shit. Tobirama cursed extremely loud as he slammed his fist down on the desk in irritation. He absolutely loathed paperwork. Toby, you shouldn't curse so loudly. What if there were children around and they started saying that in front of their parents? Chastised Hashirama, we would have to give an explanation as to why they started cursing. And I for one don't wish to see an angry mother. The Shodai shivered at that thought. Oh Kami, what Midouhime would do to me should she ever hear our son say that or worse, repeated in front of her. The Senju leader felt an ominous wind caress his very being at that moment which made him shiver. Shit. Screeched out a high-pitched voice. Both Senju brothers paled when they heard the tiny voice curse and started to turn around very slowly while turning even wider only to see who said it. They knew they were both in deep shit now as Naruto stood there by the door with an innocent grin on his face. Naruto wasn't quite sure what this shit word meant, but he sure had fun saying it, shit 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 shit. Naruto repeated before shouting out the last one as loud as he could. Hashirama had lost all function of his body and he began to wither away like a ghost who was wailing at the world. Even more so when he just heard his own son repeat the word 5 times in a row before yelling it out. Naruto was laughing into his hands as his 2chan and Oji-san, uncle, looked really funny right now as they both had their mouths agape and looked like paper floating in the wind. This was the reason his father was late. He was playing a game with his Oji-san. He wanted to play too. Can I play in your game? Naruto asked and moved to stand next to his father. He mimicked his father and opened his mouth sideways and slowly started to sway his body from side to side. A few seconds passed before both brothers snapped out of their self-induced stupors and looked to their son and nephew respectively. They were glad the boy's mother wasn't there or else they'd be dead. Granted, what they just heard him say did not sit well with them for obvious reasons, but Naruto's current form managed to make them crack a small smile. Feeling his son had played enough, Hashirama snapped his son out of it. Naruto, my son, what are you doing here? He asked the boy. The young Senju heir blinked at his father while looking up. I came to get you so we could begin our training. He told his father. I see. Listen up Naruto, I don't ever want you to repeat the word you heard here today. Spoke the father in an authoritative tone. Why? He asked innocently. Because it's a bad word. His father told him seriously. That and he didn't want his wife to find out. As soon as Naruto had heard the word bad, he knew he did something bad. I'm sorry, I didn't know it was a bad word. He apologized. That's okay son, just don't ever use that word in front of me or your Oji-chan again. He instructed. Naruto nodded his head. What about Kachan or Tmkaoba-chan, aunt? Can I say it in front of them? He asked. If it was at all possible both men paled even further than before. No. Both brothers answered quickly, hoping to defuse the situation. They would get a beating from both women if they ever heard Naruto say that. They would no doubt ask him where he heard it and he would name them the culprits. Why? He asked again. Tobirama was seriously starting to get annoyed by all the whys, but held himself in check. That's what a child does Tobirama. He told himself, glad he didn't snap. Listen Naruto, you just can't say that word to anyone ever. He told the boy. Why? He asked a third time. Both of these men had fought in countless battles in their time and had always come back exhausted every single time. But trying to explain to a 5-year-old why he shouldn't say bad words was clearly much more exhausting by far. It was an uphill battle. Look, how about I offer you one favor? The Senju leader offered, not only gaining his son's attention, but Tobirama's as well. What kind of favor? Naruto asked. Hashirama thought about this for a moment before coming up with something he felt was adequate. You can ask me for one favor, and it can be anything. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it sounds, I will try to accomplish it to the best of my ability. He explained. How does that sound? He asked the boy. Naruto thought about it. It did sound like a good deal, and he could ask for anything he wanted. You got yourself a deal too, Chan. He said happily. Hashirama breathed out a sigh of relief and was about to take his son away to start on his training, but then he heard Naruto speak up. What about you? Naruto asked his uncle. Quickly turning around, Hashirama saw his son staring at his brother. Are you going to offer me a favor too? He asked the man. Whoa, where is this coming from? I know he didn't get this from me. Thought the Shodai in surprise as his son was blackmailing Tobirama, must have gotten it from Midouhime. He thought to himself. Why you little Tobirama inwardly stopped himself and regained his composure. It seemed his nephew was the only person besides his brother who could get under his skin. He looked directly into Naruto's eyes and found no form of greed but of curiousness. How well, that was a surprise to say the least. Little brat doesn't even know he's extorting me, Toby muttered to himself. What do you want from me? A favor as well? He asked and Naruto nodded to him. Another favor would be good. He told Tobirama. Tobirama sighed but nodded his head in his nephew's direction, telling him he would owe him one. Both father and son soon left the office and went back to their training ground. "Aw man, I have so much work to do and then I have to go and train those other brats as well." Tobirama grumbled to himself before a smirk made its way to his face. Ah, the wonders of shadow clones. He sighed in relief, it was good to have those thing around. He performed the seal and made one copy of himself to stay in the office while he went to meet his students. Maybe I can introduce them to Naruto at some point in the future, he mused to himself. Life was good indeed with the shadow clones. However, Tobirama learned something: he got all the knowledge they did when they dispelled. XXX. Naruto and his father had finally made it back to their training ground. "So do you remember what I was going to teach you today?" Hashirama asked the boy. "Ninjutsu?" Naruto shouted excitedly. "Ah yes, ninjutsu. Take this then." The older Senju said as he gave his son a piece of paper and explained just what would happen once he applied his chakra. "Go on son, apply some chakra," he said to the boy. Naruto nodded his head while completely focusing on the small paper in front of him. He applied some chakra and took notice as the paper immediately started to turn soggy, but just as quickly started to turn to dust. He dropped the paper as something he wasn't expecting started to happen. From the wet and earthen piece of paper, a small sapling began to take root, signifying that Naruto not only had a very strong affinity towards Suiton and Doton, but Mokuton. It was through the Mokuton Kekkei Genkai wielded by Senju Hashirama that the foundations of Konoha had been built on. And it was a strong factor as to why he gained the title of Shaddai, along with the Kami no Shinobi, god of shinobi. Naruto turned his head in a robotic fashion to look at his father, who also had a look of surprise. "I can't believe I have the same bloodline as you too, Chan," he said excitedly. I can see that. Well, aren't you full of surprises?" Hashirama said, shocked. "Do-chan," roared Naruto as he looked at his father. "I know what I want that favor to be," Naruto said as he looked to his father. The Senju patriarch arched an eyebrow and already had a feeling as to what his child wanted to ask, and that would be, he asked the boy. "I want to learn Mokuton ninjutsu," Naruto shouted out. Hashirama chuckled as he saw that one coming a mile away. "Sorry Naruto, but those techniques would require you to have some serious chakra control and lots of chakra," he told his son, who got depressed, kinda like him when was a boy. Naruto pouted at this and opened his mouth, shy he started to say. However, the young Senju's father blurred from his spot and appeared in front of his son with his hand over his mouth. Now, no need to say that. You didn't let me finish. I said it would require those things, but I can teach you a technique in a few years," he offered, hoping it would appease his son and not earn the wrath of his wife hopefully. "How many years?" Naruto asked his father. Hashirama held up 4 fingers. 4 years. "I don't want to have to wait that long," Naruto shouted. Hashirama grinned. But there is a very good reason for waiting. By the time those 4 years come around, your chakra control and chakra pool will have increased exponentially," Hashirama said. "And I will be able to teach you whole lots of Mokuton techniques," Hashirama exclaimed, waving his hands around crazily. "Lots of techniques," Naruto hummed at this. On the one hand, he would need to wait, but when the waiting was done he would learn everything about this bloodline. He came to a decision. "I accept and will wait 4 years," he told his father. "But good. Which affinity would you like to learn?" Hashirama said as he breathed a sigh of relief when he heard his son accept. "Suiton," Naruto told his father. "Suiton, huh? Well, Toby is much better at it than I am, but he's currently busy at the moment," Hashirama muttered to himself. Naruto had caught what his father said and was a bit sad he wouldn't learn his Suiton affinity yet. Hashirama saw this and quickly spoke up. "I know I'm nowhere near Toby's mastery of that affinity, but I wouldn't call myself a slouch in that department either, you know," he said to the dark-haired boy. "Then you can teach me this affinity?" he asked his father hopefully. Hashirama nodded his head. "Sure can," he told his son. Naruto grinned. "Alright. Let's not waste any more time, Two-chan," Naruto shouted out towards his father as he ran off further into the woods and towards a lake. "Hey. Wait for me." He quickly ran to catch up to his son so they could finally get this underway. Flashback end. Those were some good times, Naruto inwardly smiled to himself. The 6-year-old's concentration was cut short as someone approached him. "Oh Naruto, I'm sorry that I've kept you waiting. Shall we begin our lesson?" said his uncle Tobirama as the favor had been called in by Naruto. Tobirama was tasked with teaching Naruto his own style of taijutsu, while his older brother would teach his own students. He just prayed that his brother's aloof attitude wouldn't rub off on his students. "It's only for a year," he told himself. What your father relayed to me, you're very proficient in your water affinity. Is this true? He asked a young child. Hi. Naruto said as he gave his uncle a nod of the head. But then your transition to my style of Taijutsu will go that much more smoothly. Tobirama stated. What's the style called? If you don't mind me asking. Naruto said more as a statement than a question. No problem asking. The master I had studied under for a short time gave it this name Taikai. Tobirama said as he told his nephew about the style he would teach him in. To Naruto the word was foreign, Taikai. He sounded it out. Weird, but okay. That is correct. This style was taught to me a few years after your father became clan head and I began to use it in conjunction with my water affinity. Tobirama said. The young raven-haired youth nodded his head and stayed silent waiting for his uncle teacher to continue. It is considered a mix of soft and hard strikes. The soft side is called pushing hands, Tobirama explained. Pushing hands? Asked Naruto eyeing his own hands. Tobirama nodded his head yes, this form will allow you to understand the internal aspect of Taijutsu as well as teaching you other things such as leverage, reflex, sensitivity, timing, coordination, and positioning. Explained Tobirama before once more continuing. This particular style works to undo a person's natural instinct to resist force with force. It instead teaches the body to yield to force and redirect it. He told Naruto. Whoa, sounds like a very useful style. Complimented Naruto, what about the hard style? What does that entail? He asked his uncle curiously. That is with like all other forms of hard contact. Strikes, kicks, and throws etc. Tobirama said to the boy. I see, so only the hard style uses some form of physical contact. Naruto said in thought. Correct. I'm going to teach you this, but with what I've added to this style as well. Watch me. Said Tobirama as he began his demonstration. Naruto watched his uncle move closer and closer to the edge of the lake that was near their location and began to breathe very slowly while relaxing his body. Tobirama suddenly took a step forward with his right leg while his other stayed behind. The right leg bent at the knee while the other was stretched. Both of his arms had followed the same motion as his legs until his right arm moved forward. Naruto wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't seen it. His uncle was calling upon the water and it suddenly answered his call as it coiled around his arm. The white-haired Senju moved from his position and while to the untrained eye looked like he was moving in slow steps but he was actually performing a kata. And then he attacked. The sound was that of like a whip. The water whip cut cleanly through some of the trees that were behind them. It was hard to believe that something as soft and flexible as water could inflict such damage when it was concentrated. What did you think of that? Tobirama asked his nephew. Naruto was snapped out of his amazement. That was amazing. He shouted out. I'm glad you think so. Now I want you to remember these things while you train in this. Alignment, breath, visualization, and body structure are important if you wish to use this style to its highest form. And remember that these ideals I'm about to tell you. Softness and breath are more powerful when using water than aggression. Tobirama told the boy seriously for once. Hi. Naruto said to his uncle. Good, let's begin. We've only got 1 year. Tobirama said. 3 years later. This was it. Today was the day that 9-year-old Senju Naruto had been waiting for the past 4 years. Today his father would begin to teach him Mokuton ninjutsu. He just couldn't wait to get stronger. And to especially prove someone wrong. His eyes had been opened on that day as he had faced an opponent who told him that those outside of these would kill him in an instant. He hadn't taken those words well and had challenged the man. Flashback. Naruto was in the personal training ground of the Senju clan and was currently awaiting his uncle so they could continue their taijutsu training. He spotted a figure off in the distance and assumed it was his family. Hello, Tobirama-sensei. He said as he bowed. What makes you think I'm Hashirama's younger brat of a brother, boy? Spoke a voice that did not belong to Tobirama. This made the young Senju bolt upright immediately and knew this was someone different. I'm sorry he started to say, but since he didn't know who the man was he trailed off. Uchiha Madara. The man introduced himself to the boy. Naruto's blood froze and his heart began to beat faster and faster. He was standing in front of a man who could rival his own father in a fight. And nice to meet you, I am Senju Naruto. He shakily introduced himself. This was his father's best friend and rival. So you're his son. Spat Madara as he was eyeing the boy in front of him. I'm not impressed, your father was much stronger at your age. You don't deserve to use the Senju name, let alone be his son. I will refer to you as boy for the duration of our time and nothing more. Madara turned to leave but halted when he felt killer intent directed towards his person. Oh, this was interesting. What's this, a Senju with some backbone? Madara said as he was amused by this but also somewhat intrigued. He would humor the child. Shut up. Snarled Naruto, I don't deserve to be a Senju or my father's son. How about I show you just how much I do? Naruto roared while getting into his Tai-Kai stance. It seemed him coming here looking for this boy's father wasn't a total waste of time. How about a wager, boy? He asked the child mockingly. Naruto eyed him suspiciously. What kind of wager? He asked Madara warily. If you can make me move both of my feet from this spot at the same time, then I will call you a Senju, acknowledge that you are his son. Madara said. Naruto stayed quiet as he thought about what Madara had said. Where was he going with this? Madara continued, and just to add a little more incentive, I will teach you one of my signature techniques. Madara offered and knew the boy wouldn't pass up this opportunity. And if you win? Naruto asked him. Madara inwardly praised the boy for not just agreeing right away. You denounce your heritage as a Senju and become my apprentice. He told the boy seriously. Naruto was blindsided by the odd request, but I'm not even an Uchiha. He said to the man. Mere details, boy. Madara honestly didn't care if he could get the boy, as just leaving the Senju name and family would undoubtedly hurt him. It would hurt on a level so deep that he may not come back from. It was a devious plan. So what say you? He asked the boy. Naruto looked directly at the man's eyes and could see no Sharingan. I don't plan on using my ninjutsu. If you were worried about that. Madara told him. Naruto looked at him and nodded. He already had a plan as to how he was going to make the Uchiha move, deal. He told Madara. With that Naruto shot off from his spot with water already swirling around his arms. He thrust his arm forward and the water snaked out like a whip aimed directly towards Madara's face. The Uchiha simply moved his head to the side, completely avoiding the attack. Naruto would need to try something else. He quickly moved out of the way from an incoming fireball and glared at the Uchiha. I never said anything about not using ninjutsu, you just assumed it. Madara told him and was glad he was able to get a rise out of the boy. Always heed caution towards the words your enemies tell you, they usually always hold something devious. He told the young Senju. Naruto snarled at the man for his underhanded use of words and was about to charge. He stopped and began to calm himself as reckless fighting was stupid fighting. Once settled, he went for the Uchiha once more. He swept low, but the man simply raised his leg avoiding his kick. Naruto ran to the tree closest to him, jumped off of it and brought his leg down overhead. He missed as the Uchiha bent his sideways. This is getting me nowhere. Naruto said as he scratched his head in frustration. He was going to try something once more and hoped it worked. Naruto gathered water in his palms and shot off 2 orbs towards his stationary enemy. The young Senju arrived exactly as the orbs were dismissed with relative ease. He threw a water-encased strike which was blocked by Madara's arm guard. Naruto jumped back a bit and once again went low, but this time with water at the tip of his foot. Even with the longer reach, Madara simply dismissed it. It seems you can't dance anymore, boy. Sneered Madara. Naruto just gave him a smirk and as soon as he got up he moved far faster than Madara had anticipated. The Uchiha took a high kick to his upper arm, but only his upper body had moved because of the force behind the kick. An impressive show of skill and strength, boy. You actually managed to tag me in a non-moving state. Madara praised him mockingly and very slowly a tiny form of respect was forming for this boy. Show me what else you're capable of, thought Madara. Truth be told, he was a prodigy in the making. Naruto growled at the backhanded compliment, try this out. Naruto said as he was done trying to use his taijutsu, he just didn't have the strength to physically move him. He was now going to resort to using his ninjutsu. Boar tiger, he started to form seals. Suiton. Mizuum Nabara, water style. Starch syrup capturing field, he called out. Naruto spat out high viscosity water infused chakra onto the surface of the ground the Uchiha was standing on. He was planning on immobilizing the man further with this and then blasting him away with this next one. Tiger informed another seal to try and beat the man he was fighting. Suiton. Suidanha, water style. Water severing wave, the boy called out. The raven-haired youth needed his chakra inside of his stomach and turned it into water. His cheeks bulged to a ridiculous proportion and he spewed out a highly pressurized stream of water towards the Uchiha. Said Uchiha saw the technique coming at him and he was mildly impressed. Naruto saw the man standing there and took the attack head-on. After a few seconds he stopped applying chakra and cut off the stream. He was a bit tired after using that technique but shrugged it off and walked over to where his opponent used to be. Nothing left, he muttered. Don't be so quick to jump to conclusions, Senju. Spoke Madara as he was behind Naruto, blade on his neck, with an impassive face. Naruto, who was about to retort, had taken notice at what he was just called. You called me Senju. He said in disbelief. Madara nodded his head. I did, as you made me move from my location with a subpar technique. I honored the deal and thus I called you Senju. Madara said as he nodded his head. The boy was better than he thought. What about me being my father's son? Naruto asked. That as well. I can see he's trained you somewhat decently. Madara said in a condescending tone. Something else clicked in Naruto's mind, why don't you call me by my first name then? Have I not earned your respect here today? He asked Madara. You will have to do much more than just make me move from a single spot to earn my respect. Respect is earned, not given. Madara told the boy. Naruto took a moment to process his words, and he had to agree with him, what about that technique you offered? Naruto asked and he couldn't help but rub his hands together, it was always fun learning something new. What is it with you Senju and learning different techniques? Madara muttered to himself, as the young Senju was showing a part of his father's personality right now. Watch the hand seals and listen carefully as I hate doing things twice. I'm going to teach you a Kaiten technique. Madara told the boy. Naruto cocked his head confused why? I don't have a fire affinity. He said. Madara rolled his eyes Senju, just because you don't have a natural affinity towards something, doesn't mean you can't learn it. It just takes more control and chakra. Now be silent and watch Madara chided the young heir of his rival clan. Rat ox dog monkey boar tiger Madara formed the necessary hand seals for the powerful technique. Kaiten Madara called out loudly as he drew his head back while taking a very deep breath. Flashback end. Naruto chuckled as that had by far been the most interesting thing he had ever experienced and he got a new technique out of it as well. He was still in awe at the sheer volume of fire the technique produced. Practice was all he needed for it. He had also decided to keep quiet about that spar as his family would no doubt scold and beat him for being reckless. Not much else to note aside from the kids he had met. He was training with his father that day when his uncle had brought along 6 kids his age. Hiruzen Sarutobi, Shimura Danzm, Uchiha Kagami, Akimichi Tarifu, Udateen Kaharu, and Midokado Himura. Flashback. Tobirama had decided to bring his team and subordinates over to his brother's home and introduce them to his nephew. It would do the children some good to interact with others instead of always training. Where are we going Tobirama-sensei? Asked Hiruzen as not only he wanted to know, but the others as well. We're going over to my brother's home as I wish to introduce you all to someone. Tobirama told Hiruzen. The Shodai. Thought Danzm, Kagami, and Tarifu. Hiruzen and his 2 teammates wondered why as they had already met the Shodai. Perhaps there was another reason for going there. Tobirama opened the gate towards the backyard as he could sense his brother and nephew in the back training. Come on Naruto. Urged Hashirama, I know you can do better than this, again. Hashirama urged out. Every member of the small group that was with Tobirama heard this and wondered what was going on. Or who this Naruto person was. Who's this Naruto person, Tobirama-sensei? Asked the 7-year-old Hiruzen. It seemed to Tobirama that his brother had forgotten to mention his offspring to his students. How was he supposed to know he hadn't done it? Well they were going to find out now. Just watch my students. He told them as each person took a different interest as to who this other boy was. Hi. Called out Naruto. Rat snake tiger the boy began forming hand seals. Doten. Dirika, earth style. Earth flow wave, he called out. Naruto stood stock still as he manipulated his chakra into the very earth itself and no sooner did the earth rise up underneath him. It rose up about 12 feet with Naruto on top and he willed the earth to follow his guidance. The earthen wave moved at his call before he decided to enact the second part of the technique Naruto then formed another seal. Snake and called out Ritsudo Tenshin, violent heavenly earth needle, very loudly. Naruto once again manipulated the earth below his feet and the beginning of the rock waves started to thin out to a fine point. It was a needle that had been created in a matter of mere moments and it launched itself towards the dummies that had been set up. The needle completely tore through the front of the chest cavity and came out of the back. It was an instant kill if used correctly. Naruto breathed out a tired sigh and jumped off of his rock which allowed the earth to flow back into the earth. How was that? Naruto had asked his father, but his eyes drifted towards the group of people standing behind his uncle. Who are they, Oji-san? He asked his uncle as he laid eyes on the group of young kids with his uncle. Oji-san. Why is he calling you uncle, Tobirama-sensei? Kagami asked his teacher. Because he is my nephew and the son of my brother. Revealed the white-haired Senju. Wah? The kids shouted in disbelief. Senju Naruto. He greeted them each with a handshake. As he passed by each and every one of them, he could tell they were trained. But only 3 of them really caught his attention. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Stated Tobirama. Hi. The group chorused. Sarutobi Hiruzen. Greeted the first boy. Naruto could see he was the shortest one amongst the group but clearly one of the more talented ones. He had dark brown hair and tan skin. Danzm was about to greet the boy and make a good impression on the Senju heir but got cut off. Hi, my name is Uchiha Kagami. Greeted the second boy oblivious to the glare from his own teammate. Naruto's actually stopped when he heard the name Uchiha and looked towards the boy. Said Uchiha had short black unkempt hair and stood a head taller than Hiruzen. Naruto nodded at him and moved on. Shimura Dansm. He greeted the Senju heir tersely. Naruto merely nodded his head and took in the boy's appearance. Just a bit taller than Hiruzen but shorter than Kagami, this one had shaggy black hair, but his most discerning feature was the X-shaped scar on his chin. Akimichi Torifu. Naruto knew of the Akimichi clan and just what they could do. This one was definitely the biggest of the group. That was saying something. Midokado Himura. Naruto knew there was no clan with that surname, so it was a possibility that this one was from a civilian family. He was impressed that he gained the eye of his uncle and had decided to train him. Udatane Kaheru. Greeted the only girl of the group as she blushed a bit at seeing the young Senju heir. She blushed even harder as he grabbed her hand and placed a kiss there. Naruto had been drilled about etiquette from his mother and Mkaoba-chan regarding girls. He was supposed to be really nice to the ones he knew and even those he didn't. It just confused him as to why he had to be nice to girls that were going to try and kill him. Moms are just weird like that, I guess. He told himself and shrugged. He faced his uncle. So why are you guys here today? Are you here to see my 2-chan? He asked his uncle. Aburama shook his head. No, we aren't here for my brother. We came to see you. He told his nephew. Me? Naruto asked curiously. Aburama nodded his head. Yes, I wanted you to meet my students and subordinates. You know, get to know each other and so on, he told the boy. Oh, okay, I guess. Follow me then, guys. He called over to them. Hashirama saw his son leading the group over to the lake and went over to his brother. I'm glad the kids can be just that, kids. We've been pushing them for a while now and it's good to just let them relax. He said honestly. Indeed, and hopefully they become friends. Tobirama said to his brother in agreement. We can only hope, my dear brother. Hashirama told Tobirama as both men soon followed after the children. What was a group session without the group, might as well join in on the fun now. Flashback end. Naruto had hit it off with the group overall, but more so with Hiruzen and Kagami. Both boys were full of life and each loved the village just as much as he did. It's too bad he hadn't been placed on a team as the three of them could have done some serious damage. But then again, being apprenticed to the first Hokage wasn't so bad either. It was rather unfortunate that he only had 1 or 2 more years to study under his father as the deal with his uncle would soon be ending. He would need to try even harder. The last year before this current one had been solely focused on learning Jinjutsu from his aunt, Senju Tamka. She was a slave driver when it came to training. If he had to rate who the hardest person he's had to learn under, she easily took the top spot. She would bonk him over the head every time he did something wrong or if he was getting distracted. Illusions were a bit different for him as even with his great chakra control, it still took him quite a bit to cast one. But when he did, they were pretty powerful if he did say so himself. She taught him quite a few techniques that he couldn't wait to use later on. His musing over the past 3 years had been cut short as a lone figure walked into Senju clan training ground. However, today was a new day. So Naruto, are you ready to learn Mokuton from me? His father asked. Hi. Naruto said, nodding his head. Good, then I am going to teach you a technique that will benefit you in the long run. Watch this. Hashirama instructed his son. He began to form seals, tiger, dog, snake and then clasps his hands together. Mokuton. Moku Bunshin no Jutsu, wood style. Wood clone technique, Hashirama called out. A wooden clone sprouted out from Hashirama's back. The young Senju wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't have just seen it. And he was going to learn this. Let me try. Let me try. Naruto really wanted to try this one. Hold on there, Naruto. I need to explain something about this particular technique. Hashirama told him. Naruto controlled himself as his father usually never used his serious voice with him. Sorry, go ahead. He said calmly as he could. Hashirama nodded his head. This is a variant that I created after seeing your uncle's own clone technique. However, where his single clone sends info back to the user, mine can send back twice as much and they last longer. He told his son. Can you explain? Naruto asked as his uncle had shown him the Kage Bunshin before but said there was no point in teaching it to him since he would learn something about it later. Guess this is what he meant. He told himself, it would have been nice to know right about now actually. As you know, our Mokuton bloodline creates life through our trees and other various things we can grow. This applies to our wood clones as well, just the sheer life force one of these clones has equals 5 of Tobirama's shadow clones. Hashirama told his son. Seriously? The boy exclaimed. Hashirama nodded his head. Yes, so you can see why I stopped you. If you had created 25, it would have been the equivalent of you creating 125 shadow clones. He said to his son. Naruto blanched at hearing the number. His uncle had told him the specifics of the shadow clone and he didn't feel like going brain dead anytime soon. He would need to regulate the amount of chakra he pumped into this. I understand. Can I give it a shot? He asked his dad. Go ahead. Hashirama told him. Naruto weaved through the required hand seals, Mokuten. Moku Bunshin no Jutsu, wood style. Wood clone technique, Naruto called out. And exactly mimicking his father, two clones surfaced from his back. Do they always come out of our body or can they manifest from different trees? He asked curiously. A good question and one I didn't figure out until I was much older than you. But yes, they can manifest out of trees if you wish. Hashirama told him. Good to know. Naruto said, nodding. Hashirama nodded, yes it is, now let's continue. Hashirama said. Hi. Naruto said. 1 year later. The full decade has come to pass as the village was now 10 years, along with one Senju Naruto. Said boy now stood at 4 foot 3 inches and came in at around 72.5 pounds. His hair had grown out exponentially enough that he was a miniature version of his father. His oval face made him look perfect in the eyes of many of the females of the village. The only reason they hadn't tried to make a move on him was for two very simple reasons. He was the son of the current Kage and his mother was extremely protective. Naruto was currently walking the streets but stopped when something caught his eye. It was a weapons shop and in front of the store laid a katana. His gaze never left the weapon. I wonder when 2chan will teach me Kenjutsu. He thought to himself. Why hadn't his father ever tried to approach the subject, maybe he should try and find out. He decided to head on home. It wouldn't hurt to ask, right? Senju compound. Naruto walked through the gates of his family compound, greeted the two guards and went directly towards his home. Finally reaching his home, he unlocked the front door and entered. I'm home. He hollered. Just as he was about to take a step, his mother, Uzumaki Mido, stepped in from a different room. Welcome home. She greeted. To Naruto she was the most beautiful woman on the planet and one day wished to marry someone as beautiful as her. With red hair too. Thanks Ka-chan. Is 2chan home? He asked her. Mido nodded her head and directed him towards the area he was at. He's in the den, I'll show you to him as I need to discuss something with the both of you. She said. Naruto raised an eyebrow but shrugged it off as he would soon find out what she wanted with him. Both finally reached the door as Mido knocked. Both could hear some papers being shuffled from their side of the door, but neither commented on it and just went about their business. Come in. Called out Hashirama. In walked mother and son to see Hashirama sitting behind a desk with a mess of papers littered around in an unorganized fashion. Oh, Mido, Haim and Naruto. What can I do for the two of you? He asked with a chuckle. Go ahead Naruto-kun, I can wait. Mido told her son. The young Senju nodded. I want to start learning Kenjutsu 2chan, can you teach me? He asked. Hashirama nodded as he knew it was one of the arts he hadn't taught to his son yet. He briefly looked to his wife and she gave him a subtle nod. You remember the deal I had with your uncle? Hashirama asked his son and got a nod from him. It was a rhetorical question, of course he would know. I do. He answered. Then you do realize I have only 1 year left and would you rather I spend the teaching you Kenjutsu or more Mokuten techniques? Hashirama asked his son. It wasn't a hard question for Naruto to answer, Mokuten. Naruto answered his father. The Shadai nodded at this as well, I figured you'd go down that path. Right now I can't teach you as I need to get back to my duties for 2 years. He said. What? 2 years, but what am I going to be doing for 2 years? Naruto was hysterical and didn't know what he was going to do. His mother smiled. I think I may have a solution to your problem, Naruto-kun. Mido spoke for the first time since entering the room. Ha-chan? Naruto asked curiously. I'm going to go on a trip to Yuzu for a couple of years and I wanted to take you along with me. She told him her idea. Yuzu? Really, but what can you teach me over there that you wouldn't be able to over here? He asked her. Well, Kenjutsu for one is I need some scrolls from my former village and the Uzumaki clan are some of the best when it comes to Kenjutsu. So maybe I could find you a teacher there. Mido offered. Really? I'd love to go with you Ka-chan. He said excitedly. Mido nodded as a smile graced her features and she turned to her husband. Then it seems both of us will be going. Then please approve it Hashirama-kun. She said hopefully to her husband. Hashirama grinned. You got it honey. He said to the redeed. Naruto looked at his mother. So when are we going to leave? He asked his mother. Mido looked at her son. In a few days, get your things ready. Mido informed him. Hi. And off he went to gather his belongings. This was going to be one heck of a training trip he would not forget anytime soon. Izushi. Both mother and son had arrived in the village that housed the Uzumaki clan. Mido was wearing a simple white kimono with 2 tags pinned in her hair buns. Naruto was wearing something his father and uncle had designed as a prototype. Black gloves were around his hands along with tighter fitting pants that still felt loose. He wore a mesh shirt with a black shit that felt like it had a metal plate in it. Over his clothes he had a crimson chest guard, shoulder guards, leg guards, and arm guards, along with black sandals with tiny spikes underneath. The last remaining piece was the kunai and shuriken holster on his right leg. Everything feels snug on me. Naruto was impressed since it didn't feel loose, but it didn't restrict his movements. I wonder what they are going to use this for. He wondered to himself. His father and uncle were even going to give him a mask, but had decided against it. The armor he wore was reminiscent of the times Hashirama was in, but with a new edge. Naruto's armor had the Senju and Konoha symbols emblazoned on the armor. He would need to thank his father and uncle when he saw them again, as he loved it. He had been in awe of it when he had first seen it, but right now he was staring at something equally in awe. Naruto was in awe at the village standing before him, and one thing came to mind, it looks really similar to Konoha. He thought to himself as he looked at the village his mother hailed from. And he was right, as some of the buildings here looked like exact copies, but there were stark differences. The Uzumaki swirl was imprinted on many of the buildings, along with some of the local shops. This village had multiple bodies of water running through it, with many bridges that allowed shinobi and citizen alike to cross at their leisure. He felt at home here for some reason, even though it was his first time here. Perhaps it was the people who showered him and his mother with kindness and respect. Well, respect towards his mother, but kindness nonetheless. His mother told him they were going to meet the leader of the village to inform her that they had arrived. Naruto said nothing but gave her a nod and continued to gaze at the village. The Uzukage Tower. Knock knock, enter. Hollered the woman who sat behind her desk. She hated doing damn paperwork and hoped something interesting happened today to lighten her mood. And in walked that something interesting as she saw a woman with buns and a young man dressed in some interesting crimson armor, Mito. The Uzukage stood up and rushed towards the familiar woman. Mito opened up her arms and welcomed the hug. It's nice to see you to Karen. She said, smiling happily. You as well, Mito. Responds Karen before spotting a miniature clone of Mito's husband. And who is this cutie Mito? Is this your son? She asked, curious to know if she was correct. Naruto blushed a bit at what this woman he didn't know just said. If he was honest with himself, he would definitely say this woman was just as beautiful as his mother. They even looked familiar. Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you, Uzukage-sama. My name is Senju Naruto. He bowed respectfully to a person of high standing. Karen was giggling like a child. I see both you and Hashirama instilled modesty into the boy. I think me and you Naruto are going to get along just fine. She said to Mito. Pardon me for being rude, but how do you know my mother? He asked as he looked directly into her violet eyes and abruptly turned away blushing. I can see he's still quite shy. Karen commented on the red dusting the boy's cheeks. Mito actually let a few giggles escape her lips. Can't you see the resemblance, Naruto? This is my younger sister. She told her son. Naruto looked back and forth between the two women and found his mother telling him the truth. How could he have been so blind? Both ladies had the same facial structure, same eyes, but each of course had their own differences. But the resemblance was uncanny. I see. Was all the young boy could say. His short and monotone answer just made each woman laugh a little harder, and now he was really turning red. From embarrassment. After Mito and her sister had stifled their laughter, Mito gave him a rundown of just how the next 2 years would be going. He would be training with a Kenjutsu master who had joined the clan a few years ago, and he was considered the best in their village. That would be the first year, while the second year would be spent training with her and learning Kenjutsu. Right, sounds good. When can we start? He asked the two women, trying to wind down his embarrassment. We start tomorrow. Both women told him. Oh, well, that was good. 2 years later. Naruto was now 12 and his 2 years had come and gone as his time in Yuzu was done. He was now getting ready to go back home to Konoha, but he was going to be making the trip back home alone. Clad in his armor, he said his goodbyes to his sensei along with the Uzukage and began his trek back to his home. He thought back to that fateful day and still couldn't help but be worried after his mother hadn't come back when she had left. He had really enjoyed himself in the village his mother grew up in. Flashback. The day was it. Today was the day he would finally get to learn the one art that had eluded him since his training had begun many years ago. Kenjutsu. His mother had instructed him to meet a man named Kenshin in a certain location. Naruto was waiting patiently for the man until he saw a shadow on the ground. It had been stretched beyond belief due to the sun being at its highest point. The silhouette began to inch closer and closer to his location until the man stood before him. The raven-haired teen was expecting a man whom he was sure would no doubt be of Uzumaki descent, instead he got something else. The man before him had hair as dark as his, but it was his eyes that drew attention. They were amber. This was Kenshin. I can see you were expecting someone of Uzumaki origins to teach you, young one. Calmly spoke Kenshin in a soft voice. Naruto was a bit startled at the man's sudden statement, but recomposed himself. I apologize if I was staring, as I was sure most Uzumaki were born with red hair. Clearly the genes of one parent overpowered those of the other. He said in an apologetic tone. I'm glad to see that some of the younger generation think before they act, but I am in fact not an Uzumaki by blood, just in name. The man told him. I'm afraid I don't understand. Naruto said confused. What did he mean by that? It's quite simple really, I used to be a samurai from Tetsu no Kuni, Iron Country, that served under a master. But when my master was killed I became a remnin, traveling the lands until I was on death's doorstep. I was dehydrated and malnourished, but then some kind people saved my life as they offered me food and drink. He explained to Naruto. And these kind people were Uzumaki I'm guessing. Naruto stated. Correct, I who no longer had a master to serve no longer had purpose. But then these people show me kindness and I feel I have once again found purpose in my life. Kenshin told the young Senju with a nod from his head. So you came to live here then and see the village's people as your master? Naruto said matter-of-factly. Kenshin nodded his head. I did and I have since become the village's best swordsman. He told Naruto. I see, then what are you going to teach me? He asked the samurai. Kenshin actually stopped to think on this before he gave his answer. I will teach you the Uzumaki Rick that all Uzumaki know, but I also wish to teach you something from my homeland that would give you an edge in battle. He told Naruto. Now Naruto was excited to learn from this man once he mentioned he wanted to teach him something from Tetsu no Kuni. What's that? He asked. Aijutsu. Kenshin said. And that is? Naruto asked. It is the art of the quick draw. It works well as a surprise attack and if timed correctly can be used defensively as well. Kenshin explained. Naruto was impressed with this attack but knew there had to be some drawbacks and its weakness. Naruto asked. You have a good head on your shoulders, Senju. The only drawback is that this attack only allows for one draw. He told Naruto. I'm afraid I don't understand. Naruto asked confused. In layman's terms it means once you draw your blade and perform a cut, you must resheath afterwards. Informed Kenshin. What? Why? Naruto asked the man. It is just how it was designed, although it's supposed to go with another style, but you won't be learning that one. Kenshin said to him with a shrug. Why? Naruto asked again. Because you aren't a samurai. This is why you will be learning the Uzumaki Rick to make up for not knowing the complementing style of Aijutsu. Kenshin told Naruto. Oh, I guess that makes sense. What's the Uzumaki Rick actually called? Naruto asked. It's called the Arainami Raging Wave. This style allows your blade to flow like a river, yet be fast and fierce like a wave that crushes those beneath its might. Kenshin said to him. Naruto only had one thing to say. When do we start? He asked. 6 months later. The past 6 months had been absolute torture on Naruto's body and mind. He was glad he had been born half Senju and half Uzumaki, or he may not have made it this far. It wasn't so much learning the stances, but the flexibility needed for them. Kenshin had told him his body needed to be able to flow just as easily as his blade. What this all really meant was, Naruto needed to train his body in a different way than he was used to doing. He had to train his arms, especially if he wanted to use Aijutsu. His mother often made light fun of him when he came home bruised and cut up, but often more than not, he was just too exhausted to fight back. Only 6 more months to go, Naruto kept telling himself. 6 months later. Another 6 months had passed, making it a full year since Naruto and his mother first arrived and he began to learn Kenjutsu. The 1 year was up for sensei and student, but before each parted ways, Kenshin had a surprise. Where are we going, sensei? He asked the man. Kenshin looked at his student. Naruto, I have spoken with Yuzuki-sama. And she has granted me my request. He told the Senju. Request? Naruto asked curiously. Kenshin nodded yes, you see on this island which we inhabit is said to be a blade that was formed from the very sea itself. From the texts I have read, this blade chooses its own master, but none have succeeded since the original wielder. He said. Both had finally entered an area underground that housed hundreds of blades. And you believe I will be the next chosen? Naruto said, but was a bit skeptical about this, but didn't voice it. Kenshin nodded his head affirmatively. I do, now open your heart and mind. Let the soul of the blade reach out to you. He instructed the Senju. Said student shrugs and does as instructed. He closed his eyes while steadying his breathing and soon his mind became clear. After a short few moments he begins to feel a trickle on his neck and slowly begins to feel an uncertain feeling within his mind, almost as if he were hearing a faint whisper that was saying follow my voice young one and let it lead you to me in a soft humming tone. Naruto still had his eyes shut and began to let the voice guide him to his destination. After walking for a few seconds he stopped as he felt he was right where he needed to be. He opened his eyes and found himself in a very secluded area that held one weapon. Beautiful were the words that came out of the Senju's mouth as he gazed upon the weapon in front of him. It was a katana, of that he had no doubt. It stood 64 centimeters in length, but it was unlike anything he had ever seen. The metal, if he could even call it that, was not like normal metal. It held no grayish hue to it, but instead it was pure white. As if foam from the very ocean was used in its creation. The scabbard was a royal blue color that went well with the pure white. The hilt was as dark as the ocean depths, and the tsuba had intricate designs that resembled waves crashing on the land. Kenshin looked to Naruto and gave him instructions: hold the blades in your hands so that it may finally see you as a potential new wielder. He told him. Naruto did as told, and as soon as he touched the katana, a blue aura wrapped itself around him. Kenshin was all smiles as a second wielder had finally been chosen. The young Senju didn't know what was going on. One minute he's looking directly at the blade and the next he's staring into a never-ending vastness of white. Naruto shook his head to try and clear it, but he couldn't. Kenshin placed a hand on his shoulders. What do you intend to do with this blade? Answer wisely, as the wrong answer will force it to kill you and cast your corpse adrift, never to be found in the waters. He said. Naruto gulped and thought long and hard about this. I will wield this blade in the hopes of protecting all that I hold dear, while striking down any who would seek to harm it. He stated with conviction. Kenshin smiled. You answered wisely, Senju Naruto. There is a legend that says that only one other has ever answered with such conviction, and she did it during the time of great chaos. The old samurai said. Great chaos? Parroted Naruto. A story for another time perhaps. Now Senju Naruto, use your blade and let your enemies feel the rage of that which only the sea can deliver. The samurai roared as water suddenly erupted from behind them. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to find himself standing in the room, but he had a katana strapped at his left hip. It seems that the Hashirama no Yumi, raging whirlpool of the sea, has finally chosen a wielder. Said Kenshin as he gazed upon the legendary weapon. Indeed it has. Naruto responded. Kenshin silently nodded to himself as it seemed Naruto could wield the legendary blade, just like a true swordsman. He thought. Congratulations Naruto, let's go and inform your mother of your success. Kenshin said to him. Both men left the area and went to inform Mito and Karen of just had transpired. Needless to say both women were happy for him and Mito was very surprised since she thought the blade to be a legend. Clearly she was wrong. Flashback end. Naruto managed a chuckle as he remembered the shocked faces of his two mother. That was priceless. Having just left his Uchiha-gakure, it would take him no more than 1 day, 2 days tops to reach the village. Especially going at the speed he was going at. I sure could use a story to pass the time, he thought to himself as he used his sensing ability to search the village. It was a useful ability when you can't always keep your eyes open. He wondered just how much the village had changed in his absence. Was it bigger? Did they gain new comrades? He wanted to know so as to keep his mind off of what had been worrying him since he left. Kacchan the teen thought to himself. Flashback. Naruto was sitting behind a desk with ink and scroll, awaiting his mother. A minute later in walked Uzumaki Mito. Good morning Naruto-kun, are you ready to learn Kenjutsu? She asked him. Hi. He exclaimed. Good, now explain to me just what factors into sealing. She asked in a lecturing tone. Factors that apply to the art of sealing are physics, geometry, mass, length, and how much chakra is being sealed. He answered correctly. Correct my son, it seems you gained my book smarts and just what can seals do. She said with a wide smile on her face. They can do anything provided the user has the skill, tenacity, and imagination. He said to her. That is also correct. For now I will instruct you on seals that will prove useful when in battle. She informed him. Which ones are those? He asked his mother. Exploding tags, storage scrolls, and gravity seals etc. she told him. Are we going to be doing this inside? He asked. Mito shook her head. No, we have a field reserved. Seals are very dangerous and if one mistake is made the results could prove disastrous. Which is why we have a field. She told him. Both soon left the confines of the building and went outside to begin the lesson. Needless to say his hand was cramped very badly. 6 months later. If the previous training with Kenshin had pushed his body to limits he didn't think he had, then his training with his mother was doing a pushing him mentally. Kenjutsu was a lot of theory with trial and error as company. His mother was a taskmaster and often gave him loads of seals to work on with very little time for break. As the person who others credited as the absolute best in the world in her knowledge and application of seals, she would only accept the best from him. It was grating on the nerves a bit, but it was all the sweeter when he finally did succeed in his task. He was currently sitting in the field they had been practicing in for the past 6 months. It's not like her to be late. Naruto idly wondered just why his mother was late and about to go search for her, but stopped when the Uzukage appeared. Hey, Naruto-kun. Can we talk for a bit? It's concerning your mother. She told him. He immediately turned serious. What happened? He demanded. Nothing serious. She was called back to the village when news spread about your father. She told the young Senju. What happened to him? He demanded yet again. Now he had to worry about both parents. From what our sources reported, your father has been fighting for the past 24 hours and your mother went to assist him. Karen said. Fighting for 24 hours. He thought in disbelief, who is he fighting? He asked her. Uchiha Madara and the Kyuubi no Yoko, nine-tailed demon fox. Karen said. Kyuubi? Naruto had never heard the term before. It's a Bijuu. She said to him. Bijuu? He said as he pronounced yet another term he was unfamiliar with. Look, don't worry about these words. Just know that your mother is safe and she helped your father. Karen said to the teen. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief once he heard this. I need to go home right now. He said earnestly. Sorry Naruto-kun, but your mother left me with strict instructions. You must finish your last 6 months of training and then can you go home? She said. But why? This training isn't as important as my family. He yelled in irritation. I understand that. Karen snapped back, but your mother wanted this, so the least you can do is master what she wants you to and show her when you go back that you have mastered this. She said with tears growing in her eyes. Naruto was about to speak up again, but held off. His mother would want him to continue this and see it through till the end. That was just the kind of person she was and he would respect her wishes. Then who is going to train me? He asked. I am, and before you say anything it's fine. It will only be for 6 months. She said shrugging her shoulders. He nodded his head and they both began. Flashback end. Hanahagakure. At last. He was finally within seeing distance of the village gates. Finally he would get to see his family and find out just what happened 6 months ago. Signing in was quick and easy and he immediately rushed to his home. People around the village just saw a blur running past them and most didn't think anything of it. It was a common occurrence. The seconds he spent running felt like hours until he finally reached his destination. Nothing seemed out of place with his home and he fished for his key, turned the knob and entered. Ka-chan. Tu-chan. Are you here? He asked frantically. We're upstairs Naruto and be a little quieter. Said a voice Naruto knew belonged to his father. He ran up the steps and entered the room that was currently housing his mother, father, uncle, and a little blonde girl he didn't recognize. Ka-chan, Tu-chan, are the both of you okay? He asked them worried. We're fine son, and we've had time to recuperate from our battle. Informed Hashirama. What happened during those 6 months? Asked Naruto. Much has happened in not only 6 months, but in the past 2 years. Tobirama answered for his brother. Like what? Naruto asked. I was past the title of Hokage and now go by the nickname. Spoke Tobirama and chuckled at seeing his nephew's shocked face. But why? Naruto asked looking to his father. I felt it was time to step down. Plus not being Hokage allows me to spend more time with my family and this little one. He lightly petted the blonde girl. And who is she? Naruto asked the adults. This is Senju Tsunade, your cousin. Informed Mito. And my daughter. Tobirama stated calmly. Naruto never thought it would have happened as the man didn't seem like he would ever fall for another, but here was the proof. Senju Tobirama was now officially a father. 2 words immediately came to Naruto as it fit the situation he had been thrusted in. Holy shit. The young Senju exclaimed loudly. Well there goes Tobirama's life and Hashirama's by default. Previously. And who is she? Naruto asked pointing at the girl in his mother's arms with his eyes. The little blonde girl was sleeping atop his mother. This here is Senju Tsunade, your cousin. Mito informed her son while slowly stroking the sleeping girl's hair. And my daughter. Tobirama stated calmly. Naruto didn't think it would have ever been possible due to the man's personality, but therein lies the evidence. Senju Tobirama was a father. He just couldn't wrap his head around this revelation and the awkwardness he had been placed in so suddenly. 2 words escaped his mouth that fitted the situation. Holy shit. He exclaimed. Now. The raven-haired youth released a gasp as he immediately clamped both of his hands on his mouth as he just realized what he had just said. He gave a sideways glance to his mother, who was sending him the most icy glare he had ever seen in his short life, and he was sweating bullets. Naruto Uzumaki Senju, she said, a dark tone that scared him to no end. Oh shit, he thought in fear. This was bad. Naruto knew he was in deep trouble as his mother only ever used his full name whenever she was really mad at him. He could have stayed silent but felt it would have only made things worse for him. Yes. He squeaked out. Just where did you learn to use such foul language? Asked Mito as she covered Tsunade's ears while continuing to glare at him. Naruto was trying to stall, hoping one of the men in the room would take it upon themselves to help him from his predicament. He grimaced when he noticed through his peripheral vision that neither father nor uncle bothered to move forward. It was every man for himself. Well, Naruto noticed she began to tap her finger. I'm waiting, young man. Mito was beginning to lose her patience as her voice steadily began to rise. If that happened, he was doomed. Naruto let out a small sigh and knew it was time for him to prove his worth as a man. He could rat out the 2 adult males in the room or he could man up and take his punishment. A thought suddenly came to mind that was just crazy enough to work. Shift the blame. I'm sorry Ka-chan. I heard the word when I was over in Yuzu used by two men who were arguing about something. I promise not to use it again or around you. Naruto muttered out the last part in a hushed voice. What was that last part? She asked sweetly. Nothing. He said quickly. The Yuzu native studied her son and came to one conclusion. He was only telling her half the truth. It was easy to see he was speaking truth regarding the fact of there being two offenders, but not if they were from her home village. It's his first offense, so I'll let slide this time. She thought to herself. Very well then, but should I hear you using such language in my presence or not, there will be consequences. Am I understood? She asked him sternly. Hi. He managed to stutter out his reply. He now chose to change the subject away from himself and to something he really wanted to know. So can anyone please explain to me what's happened in the past 2 years while I was gone? He asked the adults. Nobody answered immediately as they considered just how to answer. Let's see here. Hashirama rubbed his chin and thought as he would need to start from the beginning. It all started when I was having a conversation with Uchiha Madara, his father began. It had been a few hours since Naruto had received the entire explanation of just what had taken place the past few years. His father had slain the man he once considered his brother in all but blood and had grown weary of all the constant fighting around the nations. The man stated he wished to spend his remaining years with his family. Which is why he chose to pass on the mantle of Hokage onto Tobirama Oji-san. Naruto thought to himself. He had been worried about his mother when he found out what she had done in order to help his father at the time. She had sealed the entirety of the Kaikubi no Imko into herself, making her the Jinchuriki of the strongest Bijku. Curiosity had gotten the better of him for a moment and asked his mother what type of seal she used for the sealing. She informed him that it was a need-to-know basis and he didn't need to know. Knowing his mother well enough, he knew she would not break once she settled on something. He let it go. Then there was his uncle. He knew the possibility of the man taking over for his father was high, considering they were brothers, but he didn't think it would have happened this fast. His father had only been Hokage for close to 11 years give or take. It's going to be a bit weird calling him Hokage and not Uncle, Naruto thought to himself. However, the most surprising thing about his uncle was how he had gone and had a child. Naruto was glad to have more family joining the clan, but for the life of him, he just couldn't wrap his head around the man dating someone. The man had a very dim view on most things. Scratch that, all things, especially the Uchiha clan. Flashback. After finally getting his explanation from his father, he turned his attention to the other male in the room. So when can I meet my new aunt? He asked them. He directed the question to Tobirama, who wore a grim expression. I'm sorry to say this, Naruto, but you won't. He told the young teenager. How come? Naruto asked his uncle. Tobirama released a deep sigh. She passed away soon after Tsunade was born. Her body was frail when I had first met her, but she was one of the strongest-willed people I have ever met. She pushed through her pain and gave birth. Tobirama said in a sad tone. Oh fucking hell, now he sounded like a total jackass. Oh, Naruto said with his head done. I'm sorry, he apologized. It's fine, Naruto, you didn't know. Tobirama said with a small wave of his hand showing he didn't mind. Naruto hesitantly nodded his head. Can you describe her to me? He asked his uncle. Tobirama's demeanor shifted instantly. Of course. She was just a bit shorter than your mother, had honey blonde hair, brown eyes, and a light tan. He said with a sigh of remembrance. The youngest Senju nodded as he was beginning to paint a picture. What was her name? He asked curiously. Her name was Minamoto Haruki. Tobirama told Naruto. Minamoto, I've never heard of this clan. Was she a civilian? He asked. He internally chuckled as he could see a reason why his uncle liked her. Her first name literally meant springtime tree. Hashirama chose this time to speak. Actually, there once was a clan named Minamoto, but the name has long been lost to history. My father once spoke to me of them and stated that they, along with 3 other clans at the time, were the absolute strongest of their time. They all reigned supreme over others, but eventually wiped themselves out with constant war. He said to his son in an explanatory tone of voice like he was teaching him a lesson. Wow, they were that strong. So she was a descendant of them? He asked in surprise. Tobirama nodded his head. Yes, they were that strong, and yes, she is a descendant. He told the heir to the Senju clan. So little Tsu-chan is going to be pretty strong when she gets older, huh? He asked and got a round of nods. Indeed, my nephew and Haruki was at least fortunate enough to have held her, but won't see her grow up. He said sadly. When you met her, did she already have a frail body? Naruto asked his uncle. Tobirama nodded. Unfortunately so, and as I said earlier, she was a very spirited woman. I just hope Tsunade inherits my personality and not her mother's. He grumbled out. Well, let's just hope she gains a bit of both, shall we? Stated Hashirama as he didn't want a female Tobirama walking around anytime soon. Now that would make Konoha look like they were trying to breed a village of emos. HN Tobirama humped as he ignored the jab at his personality. Naruto grinned. That was pretty Uchiha-esque there, Tobirama Oji-san. Stated Naruto as he laughed at his uncle's face when he mentioned that. It elicited a small giggle from his mother and a loud guffaw from his father as he held his stomach and slapped his knee. Oh, that was a good one. It wasn't that funny, muttered Tobirama, who pouted like a child and looked away from everyone in embarrassment, which just made them laugh even harder. Flashback end. Now that he thought about it, his little cousin did look more like her mother rather than her father. The blonde hair overrode his uncle's hair color, but if you looked close enough you could make out tiny wisps of white hair she inherited from Tobirama. It was unfortunate that he had not been there to ever meet his new aunt or for the birth of Tsunade over a year ago, but he was here now, and that's all that mattered. He would spend as much time with her after he finished his training today. So are you ready to continue your Mokuton training, Naruto? Asked Hashirama as the man stepped out from a tree. Naruto hoped he could do that one day as well. Hell yeah! Naruto exclaimed loudly. Hashirama's eyes were searching everywhere and he let out a nervous chuckle. Make sure your mother doesn't hear you say that. But before we begin I want to give you something. Hashirama said to his son. The Shodai Hokage then handed his son a green crystal gem on a rope. What's this? Naruto asked his father. That is something I found one day when I was but a child like you, and it's something I've been wanting to pass down to you. Perhaps one day even you will pass it down to your son. He said as he ruffled his son's hair. Tu-chan. Naruto was blushing a bit at that, but then smiled. Thanks Tu-chan. He said. You're welcome, now let's get started. Create 40 clones for me and we will begin. Ordered Hashirama. Naruto nodded his head in compliance and made the seal. Mokuton. Moku Bunshin no Jutsu, wood style. Wood clone, Naruto called out, and with that training for the two Uchiha began like it was a normal day once again. 2 years later. 2 years passed in Konoha and much had occurred. Not all of it was good though, as a great tragedy had wrapped itself around the village all but over a year ago. It had struck the entirety of the village, but none more so than the Senju clan. Naruto, who is now 14, had lost a part of himself that day and had changed a bit as a result. He still retained his old personality, but now people would often say he acted more like the Nidaime from time to time. Everything changed on the day when Senju Hashirama, his father, had passed on to the next life. He still couldn't believe that his father was gone, but he managed to move past that fact. Flashback. The mood around the village was weary at best and somber at its worst. News had spread around the village that the Shodai had passed on. The Senju clan had tried to keep the news under wraps, but when something this big happens, it tends not to stay a secret for very long. Well, the entire village had indeed felt the loss of one of its founders, but 5 individuals had felt it the deepest. Tsunade, while still only being 2 at the time, was a very smart girl. She loved her uncle like a second father and would often spend much time with him when her father was not around. He had even promised to teach her how to gamble one day. She had no concept of life or death, but even she could clearly see the sadness coming from her family. Tumka was in a confused dazed and had refused to accept that her brother had passed on. In her eyes nothing could defeat him, so when it had really sunk in for her she had cried the most. She had since calmed down after she grieved with her family. Tobirama was very experienced with controlling his emotions, especially in the time he grew up in, but this just happened to be one of those times. He had felt sad when he lost his 2 youngest brothers early in life, but this just felt different for some reason, and he was still trying to wrap his head around what he knew. He had lost his eldest brother, a man who acted more like a father to him and his sister than their real one did. He had lost a man who had sacrificed much for them so they could live a better life, no matter the cost to himself. One sibling was all he had left now, and he would do everything in his power to make sure she was happy and protected. This was something he could do for all of his family, now that he was Hokage. The 2 who had taken it the hardest, however, was the man's wife and child. It took a paramount effort to bring Uzumaki Mido down, as she was one of the strongest-willed people in the village, and this was one of those times. It would have been very easy for her to fall into a depression, but she knew her husband wouldn't have wanted that. She still has numerous reasons to continue living. Naruto, Tsunade, Tumka, Tobirama, and the village her husband created. Those people above all else, but she also had to hold back the bitch sealed inside of herself. Naruto wasn't a stranger to death, as he understood its concept somewhat, but it was one thing to understand something and another to experience it. He had held nothing back when he had learned the news and came out different once he had finished. Everyone stated that while being his father's remaining legacy, he now acted more like Tobirama. He honestly couldn't be bothered to care what the general populace thought of him. The only people whose opinion mattered to him was his family's. He had spent a majority of his time with his cousin, as she had asked him why her uncle had passed on and left them alone. Naruto honestly didn't know if he could give her an adequate answer. He didn't leave us alone, Tsu-chan. Even now he's watching over us, along with your Ka-chan. The raven-haired teen tried to soothe his cousin. The little blonde girl seemed to accept the answer for now and he went to hand her to his uncle. Now he stood a few feet away from the podium where he would give his own eulogy. Finally he began to move forward. He was currently overlooking the proceeding at his father's funeral and was glad most if not all who inhabited Konoha were in attendance. His mother and uncle had already spoken their piece, now it was his turn. Naruto stood in front of the podium and took a deep breath. He stared into the vastness of the crowd and then looked to his father. The man's body had been placed before them for people to pay their final respects. The ghost of a smile tugged on his lips as he gazed upon his father. The man had a serene smile on his visage and it seemed he was finally at peace. He cleared his throat. I am glad to see that the entirety of Konoha has come to pay their last respects to the man who was not only the Shodai Hokage, but my father. To me my father was many things, he was my best friend, teacher, a role model, and lastly a hero. He began honestly. He was my best friend as I'm sure he was friends to most of you, even if you didn't know him. He said as he heard a chorus of people agreeing with him. Which was the truth as his dad was a pretty open guy with anyone. My father was a teacher who taught me not only about how to be a shinobi, but about life, family, friends, and love. I'm sure many of you out there have learned something from him regardless if he knew you or not. He was a role model that not only I as a son, but we as a people should strive to emulate. Naruto said to the crowd. The enormous crowd of people were paying rapt attention to the young man standing before them. And lastly, he was a hero. Many people were agreeing with him. He was a hero who would not hesitate to lay his life down for the person next to him, whether he knew them for 10 years or 10 days. He said with a small smile. He continued on. My father was just that kind of man who would rather talk things out than have more blood spill unnecessarily. I see numerous clans here today whether it be from the Senju, Uchiha, Hyuga, Aburame, Akimichi, Sarutobi, Shimura, Inuzuka, Yamanaka, Nara, and Kurama. He said and each and every person who belonged to one of those clans perked up at hearing their surname. He would be proud to see so many clans who were once trying to kill one another with so much hostility, standing side by side next to each other. People were beginning to murmur that it was indeed true. Hashirama would indeed be proud. He gained their attention once more. My father once told me to die in battle defending your home is a shinobi's greatest honor, but to die in the embrace of your home and family is a shinobi's greatest joy, he said as he looked at his father's body, and as you can see by his joyous smile, he did just that. He passed in his home and is now surrounded by those whom he called his family. Naruto outstretched his arms telling everyone present they were that family. This took everyone by surprise, as many had no idea that their Shodai had even thought about them like that. It brought tears to some of their eyes as his words reached to their very souls as he spoke to them. His will of fire does not only live on through me, but everyone present. Now I ask you, will his death extinguish the flame of our will, or will it burn even hotter than before? Naruto shouted this out loud enough for everyone to hear. As soon as his voice fell silent a thunderous boom took its place. The entire populace had met his moving speech with vigor as cheers went up while others began to chant our will of fire will never be extinguished. A new spark had been ignited as an old one had been snuffed out. It was indeed a sad day with the passing of such a man as Hashirama Senju, but in his place stood his son. His spark would only continue to grow brighter and would illuminate future generations. Flashback end. The beginning that had set the foundations for their way of life had ended, but from that sprouted a new beginning to their future. Naruto was currently on his way to continue his training with his mother in Genjutsu, as she had so much more to teach him. He was pushing himself even harder now, but not only for himself, but for his family and home. It had only begun about a year and a half ago, but the embers of war had surfaced. A few skirmishes had taken place here and there, and it was only a matter of time before a line was crossed. He needed to be strong enough to protect Konoha, just like his father. However, strength and skill only counted for so much in this day and age. Experience is what he needed the most now. He had already gone out on a mission with Hiruzen and Kagami under the guidance of his uncle, but he needed more. He would try and see if he could gain more after his business with his mother was finished, as she had called him today for a very specific reason. Flashback. 4 figures were silently moving unperturbed through the canopy to their destination. The group of 4 consisted of Senju Naruto, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Uchiha Kagami, and Senju Tobirama. The reason for them not currently residing in Konoha at the moment was due to them being on a mission that was assigned by Tobirama. An assassination attempt had taken place a few days prior, and they were the response team. The attempt had been aimed not at a shinobi or clan, but towards a very wealthy civilian merchant who brought income to their village. It would have been not only crippling to their economy, but to their reputation as well. The assassin had been captured and interrogated, and after a few grueling hours had caved. They were now on their way to the location given. Tobirama had personally selected the team, but would not be leading them this time. Leadership responsibility for this mission fell to his nephew as he wanted to give him, along with the other two, more experience out in the field. At the time he felt he could trust them to succeed, but after thinking it over he decided to go and oversee things. Each person was sporting the prototype armor that had been provided to Naruto over 2 years ago, the only difference being the porcelain masks covering their identity. Hashirama had toyed with the idea of giving them code names, but chose not to. They would rely on specific hand signals for their communication. Naruto held his hand up with a closed fist, informing them to stop. Okay, listen up. We are only a few miles away from our target, once we enter their vicinity all chatter will cease and we will talk with our hand signals. He informed them in a hushed tone. Hi. The group chorused softly. The team leader nodded his head and ushered his team forward. Each man had stopped to view the small city that was made out of tents. It was Spartan in design, but it got the job done. Naruto turned to his uncle. How many chakra signatures can you detect? Naruto signed the question to his uncle. Tobirama got the message and began to concentrate. The man opened his eyes, 50 chakra signatures belonging to Genin and Chunin level shinobi, and another 30 or so belonging to some women and children. He signaled back. That last piece of information actually made Naruto halt. What are we going to do about the women and children, Naruto? Asked Kagami and Hiruzen. Tobirama had seen the question asked and wondered how his nephew would respond. Naruto stayed silent for a minute and thought very carefully about just how to proceed. As he was thinking he briefly wondered how his father would have handled this, and no sooner had he thought that did his answer arrive. We will herd the women and children away from here and then we will finish off the clan. He told them. Are you sure of this, Naruto? Asked Tobirama. There was no hesitation in Naruto's voice. I am. We as shinobi from Konoha will not stoop as low as to spill the blood of those who are innocent or don't have our training. We are no longer in the warring clan era and these children deserve to live just as much as the ones residing in our village. He told his uncle honestly. Tobirama along with the other two took in his words. Then what will you do if they come seeking revenge for their fallen fathers, brothers, or uncles? Asked Tobirama. Nobody was expecting him to answer immediately. Let them come. He said. His answer surprised them. At least they will have lived their lives by the time they decide to come. My father would have made the same choice. He said. Hashirama would always try to avoid spilling blood whenever possible. The Nidaime had been about to tell him something, but went silent as he processed the last statement by his nephew. Indeed, my brother would have found a solution similar to this, he thought. Very well then, Naruto. Agreed Tobirama. How do you plan on doing this? He asked his nephew. The young man took a few seconds before answering. Can you locate the exact position of the women and children? Naruto asked his uncle. The man nodded once more and got to work. They are sequestered off to the east of the camp, all of them. He informed them and couldn't believe the luck of his nephew. Everyone was in the same spot. His father must have been smiling down upon him today. Very good. Kagami Naruto turned to the Uchiha. I want you to use your Sharingan to guide them away from the area and if possible plant some false memories of a place they think is home to them. Naruto asked and saw it gained him some questioning looks. Kagami looked at his leader for a good few seconds, trying to discern if he was serious about doing that. He was met with the serious gaze of his friend and nodded his head in compliance. Naruto had responded in kind and looked to his uncle. I want you to create 5 shadow clones and have them stationed around the entire camp. You're going to act as a line of defense should any manage to get away while relaying information to us individually of any other movements. He said and Tobirama nodded his head and found the plan to be solid. Very well. He told his nephew. Sounded good so far, so he let him go on with his plan. Good, well you two are doing that. Hiruzen and myself will deal with the group. Naruto looked to each man and gave each a nod. For Konoha. He said. For Konoha. They each whispered it, but you could feel the emotion behind it. Move out. Naruto ordered his team. Naruto and Hiruzen. Both young men stood silently in the shadows, watching their targets move about without so much as a care in the world. Naruto looked to his running mate and could clearly see the emotion rolling off of him. Are you nervous? Naruto asked. I am. Admitted Hiruzen. Are you not? The young Sarutobi asked his friend. Naruto nodded slowly. I am. I'm downright terrified for what we are about to do, but we must do this, Hiruzen, or even more blood will spill. He replied to his friend. The young Sarutobi heir knew that, but it didn't mean he had to like it. He was relieved however to know his friend was feeling the same as him and calmed down a bit. It was never a nice feeling when you are the only person feeling a certain way. It always helped when someone else was in the same boat. What's the plan then? Asked Hiruzen looking to his friend. Simple. You immobilize them and then I knock them unconscious. Explained Naruto, still looking at their targets. Just unconscious. But I thought, he said as he trailed off confused at what he was told. That comes after they are knocked out. It will be easier for us to do the deed when they aren't fighting back. Naruto explained to the Sarutobi heir. Hiruzen sighed, very well my friend. May the gods above and below have mercy on us for what we are about to do. He said. Amen. Naruto said in agreement. Whistle whistle, that was the signal they had been waiting for. Kagami had accomplished his task and now it was their turn. Hiruzen, if you will, Naruto said to the other boy. Hiruzen went through some hand seals boar tiger and whispered Doten. Yomi Numa, earth style. Swamp of the underworld, and just like that Hiruzen had created a muddy swamp on a large scale that was able to encompass the entirety of the tents that housed the 50 signatures. Cries were heard from all over as the shinobi had finally realized they were under attack, but by then it was far too late. Naruto had to admit he was impressed with the amount of power and skill his friend wielded, and on a large scale. No doubt in his mind that Hiruzen would one day be a very powerful shinobi. Silently he sighed as it was now his turn, he performed the hand seal Mokuton. Kajukai Kamarin, wood style. Advent of a world of flowering trees, he called out. The ground began to rumble as multiple trees began to rise from up underneath the earth and began to sprout flowers. The flowers once opened began to saturate the air with their pollen. Don't breathe in the pollen. Naruto informed Hiruzen as they watched from their vantage point. No matter how many times he saw it, Hiruzen was still in awe. The might of the Mokuton was truly frightening. Bodies began to fall one by one atop each other. With the initial attack now over, Naruto recalled the flowers. How are we going to eliminate them? Asked Hiruzen as he had been dreading this. He didn't even want to think about doing this. Do you know any Kaiten techniques? Or would you rather use the cold steel attached to your back? It is your choice my friend, Naruto said to the young Sarutobi. The young man didn't even dignify the question with an answer and flew through his own hand seals while gathering his chakra. Kaiten. Msenka no Jutsu, fire style. Phoenix Age fire technique, Hiruzen called out. He spat out miniature-sized fireballs directly towards the downed men and up in flames they went. It was over in a matter of seconds. They weren't even that strong, muttered Sarutobi. Indeed. The only one worthy was the assassin we caught, the rest were below average at best. One man's actions condemned an entire populace. Said Naruto in a sad tone. The fire had been raging for a few seconds, completely erasing the existence of there even being people here to begin with, and now Naruto would wash it away. Suiton. Miserapa, water style. Water trumpet, Naruto called out disappointedly. Naruto launched a jet of water from his mouth and began to extinguish the roaring flames in front of him. He cut off the flow of chakra and surveyed just how bad the area was after their attacks. It wasn't as bad as he had originally thought. Is the deed done? Both teens heard the voice of Tobirama. Each teen turned around to face the man and nodded in response to his query. Kagami had informed them he had planted the false memories of a place they believe is home, so they can go there soon enough. Good. He said. With their objective complete they could finally return home. Flashback end. And that was how the Tatsushiro clan had made its way to Konoha. It was also how Naruto got his third contract with the dragons, as his father had given him the slug contract when he was 6 and his mother had given him the saber-tooth panther contract a year later. The clan of dragon guardians had ignored the false memories that Kagami had implanted in their heads as they had already decided to try a new village as their last one had used them as their personal breeders. So the village had gladly welcomed the clan of dragons in with open arms and large smiles as they celebrated the arrival of a new part of the ever-growing family. However, the last memory was a tough one as he had to take many lives that day and had been a bit of a recluse after that. He shook the thought from his head as he had finally arrived at his home to see his mother as his genjutsu was still ongoing. He chalked up his continuing training from his mother as her wanting to focus her mind on something else. Training in his Mokuton had continued as well, but now he had to make do with the scrolls his father had left behind. He entered his home. "Ah-chan, I'm home." He called out to her. Mito's voice rang through the hall's welcome home. "I'm in my workshop." She hollered back to him. Naruto had hollered back to her that he would be up in a few, but first entered the kitchen to grab a snack. After eating something he made his way upstairs to see his mother working on yet another seal, and to those who thought they knew her thought she was doing fine. Naruto could see different. She may have been acting the same way she did when his father was alive, but he could see a small part of her went along with him. Naruto had been informed that the seal holding the bitch back had begun to grow weak, but he wasn't sure just how fast. Maybe he could get an answer today. "You called for me, Ka-chan?" he asked his mother. Mito nodded at him and beckoned him over to her. "As I've mentioned to you before, the seal holding the Kaikubi is beginning to weaken," she told him. Naruto nodded his head. "How long do you think before it fails completely?" he asked his mother. Mito shrugged her shoulders. "I'm not entirely sure, but as long as I keep trying to modify it, it should continue to hold for a good number of years," she explained to him. Now he was confused. Why did she want to tell him this now if the seal would hold for many more years? She continued, I can see by your confused expression that you would like an explanation. She said, and Naruto simply nodded his head. As I've just stated, the seal will eventually disappear, and when it does I plan on having the kick be sealed into someone else. She said. A very uneasy feeling began to surface in the pit of his stomach. I'll wager I already know who the lucky person is, he said quietly. Mito sadly smiled at him. I'm afraid there is no other choice, my son. Your body is a mix of Uzumaki and Senju, plus you have your Mokuton. That alone will allow you to suppress and eventually tame the Kaikubi over time. She said with a sad smile. But why tell me this now? Would it have not made more sense to tell me this later and not when there is a possibility of war on the horizon? He demanded. I know this is hard to take in, but I could not trust just anyone with this. And the reason I'm telling you this now is so that you can help me with designing the seal that is to be placed on you. She said as she held her ink and brush with a blank scroll before her. Naruto didn't like this, but this was something only he could do. The woman who had given birth to him believed he could do it. Very well then, Kachan. I will do it for you. He said to his mother. Thank you, my son. Now let's see if we can't design a seal for you. She smiled so bright he couldn't help but return it. They got ready to work. 3 hours later and neither was smiling anymore. It had been a very long day for the both of them and they were going to call it quits for the day. Naruto got up and stretched his body but noticed his mother didn't follow. She was still sitting there trying to continue the process, stroke after stroke, and it was then that Naruto noticed something wrong with the seal. His eyes widened. Kachan, wait. Don't finish that stroke you're making. He called out, but it was too late as she finished the stroke. Mito had just finished the exact stroke her son had told her not to. What do you mean, she asked and then looked closer. Oh no. She gasped out. Mother and son watched as the scroll that contained their seal began to levitate in the air and it began to glow. Both were rooted to their spots and just before they regained their composure and made a swift exit, a flash of white light enveloped the room and them. Naruto. Naruto had slowly began to remove his hand away from his eyes as the sudden white flash of light had already dissipated. As soon as he did, a bevy of images began to assault him. He watched as the very being he and his mother had just had a discussion about begin to rampage on his home. The Kaikubi was laying waste to everything that stood in its path with a controlled precision. The scene changed now. He was watching as a lone person stood atop the Hokage monument overlooking the village with a satisfied smile on their face. This person was running his father's village in a way that was far too militaristic for him. Naruto couldn't make out much of the person as the image of the person was hazy at best. Once more the images shifted. He looked around as he wasn't sure where or what he was witnessing now, but he could clearly make out two people. One was clearly a woman given her small stature and curves while the other was male. Both were fighting the other. However, what drew him further in was the man, or more precisely his eyes. They were purple and had a ripple-like pattern around the sclerae. Power was rolling off the man as he was easily dispatching the female. However, she wasn't going down easily and kept getting back up no matter how many times she was blasted back. He could see the will this woman had. He needed to know more about this man, but once again the scene shifted. No. Wait. He screamed as the images changed. It became obvious to Naruto just what he was watching. It was a future that may come to pass. Just as these thoughts were rolling around in his head, he heard a monstrous roar which startled him. Roar. A mighty roar off in the distance from his location pierced the heavens. He ran over to where he heard the sound and was stunned silent. It was a Bijku, but unlike anything he had ever heard of. This creature was simply just enormous. It clearly towered above even the mountains that surrounded it. Its tails were swishing back and forth causing mass amounts of destruction. Why does it have 10 tails? I thought the Bijku only went up to 9. He said to himself as he watched the ginormous beast rampage unhindered. He kept his gaze upon the mighty beast as he kept trying to get a better view of it. Any detail could be of importance. It held no real distinct features, unlike what his mother told him about the Kaikubi, but it did have something he did recognize. It was its eye. The eye was the same, but different from the one the man held. While it had the same rippled pattern as the first eye, that was where the similarities ended. This eye on the Bijku was red in color, but had 12 tomo, 3 around each ring. A few seconds passed as he kept watching the Bijku destroy the area around it with relative ease, and he expected for the scene to change once more. He finally looked around and took notice that he was no longer standing alone. There was a group of people who were standing beside him, and even larger group standing behind him. He couldn't recognize any of those around him, but he could actually make out a few distinct features. A woman that was standing to his right had the same fiery red hair as his mother, while another with short blue hair was on his left. Next to the Redeed was a man who had the brightest hair he had ever seen in his life, along with a woman with long black hair with a woman identical with the exception of short hair. Next to her was another Redeed with short horns coming out from her head and a man with gray hair and short horns as well. Opposite the man with bright hair stood a tall man with white hair, and next to him was a woman with possibly the largest breasts he's ever seen and a man with extremely pale skin. He couldn't inspect any more as the image before him vanished in a white light. Mito. Mito had removed her hand in the same fashion just as her son had from the blinding light. Images began to run across her field of vision. She saw 8 people standing just in front of her, 3 were male, while the rest were a female. Mito is a very smart woman, so she knew that 7 of the 8 before her were not from her time. However, she did know that one of them was her son. A mother just instinctively knew her child. The group were unfamiliar to her, but the female with fiery hair like her own had to be one of her kinsmen as she had the same red hair as her. The one next to her son had the brightest hair she had ever laid eyes on, but what caught her attention was her son. He was doing something that should be impossible. He was using the Kikbi's chakra to its full power without any repercussions. Her son was using it to strengthen his Mokuton while also giving it to the group as they were surrounded with red auras in the shape of a fox. Mito heard her son calling out to the woman. Hina Shina Kashina. Mito heard her son roar over to the now named woman. Mito smiled to herself. It seemed another option had presented itself to her as the next representative of Konoha. Before she could make heads or tails of whatever battle they were fighting, the images changed. Now she was watching the very bitch she had just witnessed her son and Kashina using, destroying the village she called home. It shifted once more, but this time her son, the gray-haired man along with the blonde-haired man were confronting said Bijku. She knew it was an illusion, but she did it regardless. Be careful, Naruto. Mito screamed at the top of her lungs at her son, and the scene changed once more. Roar. A startling roar shook the very earth she was standing on. She may not be able to sense whatever made that roar as this was just a vision, but she knew it was something bad. Taking a few steps forward, she froze once she gained a better view. For the first time in a long time, Uzumaki Mito felt fear take hold of her heart. This monster was unlike anything she had ever experienced with the Kaikubi. There in the distance was a beast so big it could trample over the Kikbi she held inside of her. It was no contest in her opinion. The single eye and 10 tails was what kept her focus for the moment until she heard something else. Footsteps, she thought. There was indeed a thunderous marching of feet headed directly towards the beast's location. An army appeared to confront the Bijk. At the forefront of the large battalion stood one man, and her heart stopped. It was her son. Beside him stood some people she did recognize and some she didn't. Why? Why was her son stepping up to fight the monster in front of him by himself? Before she could witness the mighty battle that was to ensue, the field before her vanished in a flash of white light. Both Naruto and Mito were laying on the ground groaning and panting for breath as what they just saw not only shook them mentally, but physically. What did we just see? Naruto managed to groan out. There were so many images. Mito trailed off as she tried to locate the scroll, but found it turned into nothing but ashes. Naruto looked to his mother Ka-chan. I think whatever we managed to create with that seal allowed us to peer into the future. Naruto offered his opinion on the matter. Mito nodded in agreement. I believe you are correct. What did you see? She asked her son. Naruto relayed everything he had seen and who he had seen to his mother. Mito listened very carefully to everything, down to the smallest detail. Some of the information he explained matched up with hers to a certain point, but then things started to diverge. The people they had each seen were similar, but some were obviously not in certain places. Mito had explained what she had seen, but decided to keep one little piece of information to herself that she had seen. None of this makes sense. The locations are similar, and even the people. But why are some of the events differing at certain points? Naruto raged at the sheer ridiculousness of this whole thing. It was starting to make his head hurt when thinking about it. Are these visions what our future is to become? He asked his mother. Mito decided to offer her son some wisdom. The future is a never-ending possibility with many paths one can walk. She said sagely. Naruto calmed down a bit after hearing his mother talk. He knew she spoke truth and it would do him no good to get angry over a future possibility that may not even happen. He sighed. I'm sorry, Ka-chan. I lost my composure just now. If we can eliminate just one point in that time, I say we take it. Seal the Kikbi into me and in turn seal me into a scroll so that I may help to stop that future from taking place. Naruto announced as he was ready to take this on. Mito was stunned that her son would offer to seal himself away so that that future may not come to pass, and she couldn't be any prouder of him. He was willing to sacrifice himself along with everything he's ever known to help those he doesn't even know. I will seal you away, but not with the Kaikubi. She told him. Why? Questioned Naruto as she was now changing her mind. If I seal the Bijku inside of you, then I will die soon after. She revealed and Naruto couldn't help but frown. I have something planned that may also help change the future, aside from sealing you. She told her son. He quirked a brow. And that is? Naruto asked as he was curious about what she was planning. She smiled. I'm afraid I can't tell you. You will have to trust me on this one," she said, looking him straight in the eye. Silence had fallen upon them and he sighed. "Very well then. I will trust you on this," he said with a nod of the head. "Thank you," she replied, giving him a hug. "I will begin designing a special seal to allow for your sealing. Train as hard as you can, because even I don't know what it's like to be sealed. Will you be able to move? Or will you be in suspended animation?" she inquired. Naruto nodded his head and went off to train with some clones. Mito stayed behind so she could rest and then begin thinking about the seal. Hokage office. A few weeks passed since the incident and now both Mito and Naruto are standing in front of Tobirama in his office. They informed him of a few things that the two of them had seen and had kept a few of the details to themselves. The fewer people that knew the better, they didn't need other people trying to change things when it would only just end up complicating things even more. Tobirama rubbed his chin. "So you plan on performing the sealing today?" he said. It was not a question, but a fact. Tobirama shook his head at his nephew's reckless behavior, but soon a smirk tugged his lips. He knew for a fact that his brother would have approved of this. "That we are," replied Naruto. Anidame nodded and took in the attire the man before him wore. "You look just like your father when he got ready for battle in all of your armor. It will be quite shocking for people when you come back," he said with a small grin. Naruto had to stifle his laughter as he knew he would indeed shock some people. His mother came forward here. Mito said as she handed her son a very large scroll that he had seen often in this office. Naruto was curious. "What's this?" he asked his mother. "That is something your father had been wanting to give you once you got a bit older. But seeing as you're about to undertake a very long mission, we decided you should get it now. The Fukin no Sho, Scroll of Seals, is yours," said Tobirama. "Your father sealed a few other things of his in there for you, whether they be techniques, weapons, or even words of wisdom. I along with your uncle have also sealed a few things that will undoubtedly help you once you come back," explained Mito as she knew that if her son ever mastered what was in there he would be incredibly strong. He looked at his mother. "Like what?" Naruto asked curiously. "I'm not going to go into detail about the techniques I or your mother put in there, just make sure to read up on what I put in there. I put the base information on other countries, but just that. Who knows how much things will change in the next some odd years," she told him. "Makes sense. How are you going to explain my sudden disappearance?" he asked them. Mito waved her hand. "Don't worry about that. Just worry about what you're going to do when you get released," Mito told him. Naruto sighed as he put his arms up. Fine, I was just asking," he said. The raven-haired teen stood up from his position and went to give his uncle a hug. A few words were exchanged between them before he went to his mother. "I'm going to miss you, Naruto. It just won't be the same without you here by my side. I'm very proud of what you're doing and I know your father would be too. I love you and be safe when you come back," Mito said as she was beginning to tear up and she gave her son a kiss on the cheek. Naruto nodded his head. "I will, and I love you too, Kachan," he said. He was tearing up at seeing his mother but used his arm to wipe them away. Tobirama came forward here. He said, handing Naruto what appeared to be a sword hilt. Naruto however knew just what this was and his eyes widened. He shook his head. "No uncle, I can't," he said as he tried to reject his uncle's gift. Tobirama ignored his nephew. "Take it as a gift, Naruto," he said as he pressed his fabled blade into Naruto's hands. The Raijin no Ken was a sword like no other and his uncle was giving it to him like it was nothing. Naruto nodded, finally accepting his uncle's gift. He smiled. "I guess this is it, guys. Wish me luck on my future endeavors," Naruto said as he ran through his hand seals and slammed his hand on top of the special scroll. The seal array began to spread across his hand and he vanished in a cloud of smoke. "Good luck," both adults said. Mito bent down and picked up the scroll. It would be in her possession until the day he was to be released. "I guess I will have to wait a few years until I can see my son once more," Mito thought, and would soon need to begin planning if she wanted things to go according to plan. She bid Tobirama goodbye as she went back to her home. Tobirama would not see his nephew ever again and the next time Mito saw him she would already be old. Days turned to weeks and those weeks turned to months before people began to question the whereabouts of Naruto. Tobirama explained to the populace that his nephew was on an extremely long-term mission at the moment. People bought the excuse for a time, but then those very months turned to years. And once more did people begin to ask the whereabouts of the Shadai's legacy. Again he explained the situation and informed them of the actual mission. The people learned Naruto was going from village to village, whether they be minor or major, to try and smooth over relations with said villages to try and attain peace. The mission would take him numerous years to accomplish. Everyone calmed down after hearing that and went about their lives. "Well, at least I've bought him a good number of years now," Tobirama sighed and went back to work. 30 years later. Naruto was floating endlessly in a sea of white and was positive that the effects of time itself had ceased to exist here. The reason he thought this was because he was still in the body of his 14, nearly 15-year-old self. Well, I may have not aged physically, but mentally he sighed. He wasn't sure just how much time had elapsed outside, as it hadn't even felt like an hour had passed since his sealing. Training in what he had been left in his own scroll was all he could do to pass the time, but scrolls could only do so much. He really needed a teacher for certain things. Like Senjutsu, he thought to himself. Now that would be a useful ability. Naruto had read over the words his father left, and the name had kept recurring in his reading. He was simply fascinated with this. The user was using the power of nature itself to augment their abilities, thereby becoming a senin sage. It sounded very useful, but it seemed that those who weren't trained in it by someone who already understood the mechanics would very likely endanger themselves. I wonder how Toussaint learned this. He thought to himself curiously, as that was one of the many wonders he wanted to know. He didn't bother to think long on the subject and decided to shelve it until he found a proper teacher in the subject. Instead, he had worked on his kenjutsu and came to one conclusion about his uncle. The man is a certified genius, he thought to himself. It was the only word that came to mind when he thought about the extremely dangerous technique he had devised. It was tough learning, but he had done it. He knew he would never be able to use it fully like his uncle could, but as long as he had it, he would incorporate it into his kenjutsu. Most of his time went to this while his clones focused on everything else. Konoha politics, kenjutsu, and other hidden was thankful for his wood clones and let out a sigh. I wonder when I will come out. He wondered to himself. He took a meditative form, as this was something he learned from one of his father's scrolls. It would help him center himself, whatever that meant. Naruto cracked one of his eyes open and noticed that some form of light had begun to filter through his seal. It appears it's time for me to finally make my long-awaited appearance back in the world. It's get ready. Naruto softly spoke to himself. He lightly grazed the headband his uncle had stored away for him, as it would be customary once he stepped foot back in Konoha. Naruto grinned just as a white light enveloped his entire being, and he was now going back into the world once more. When he opened his eyes, he noticed that it was dark. That was the first thing his eyes noticed as they adjusted. Naruto knew he was back in the real world, and the reason was simple. He could feel the fresh air brushing against his face, but why was he released at night? And in the middle of nowhere, just what was going on? Thoughts on the matter stopped when he finally took note of 4 people in front of him. 3 of them were obviously adults, while the other was clearly a child. You can't really call her a child, Naruto, when you yourself are still one as well. He chided himself. Naruto sighed internally to himself, maybe only in body, but I digress. I guess I should see what is going on. He told himself. The clouds hovering above the earth and covering the moon had begun to part in the sky. Light from the moon had shined down upon their location, and while it uncovered the group of 4, it kept Naruto obscured. All but his headband. Naruto slowly bent his knees a fraction. There, right in front of him, were 3 shinobi who clearly didn't belong to Konoha, as none wore their headband. However, what did catch his attention and made him grip his katana tighter was the girl they had tied up behind them. Why do they have a girl tied up and a shinobi of Konoha no less, he thought in frustration. Mind explaining to me why shinobi from Kumagakure have a shinobi from Konoha and a little girl no less? He demanded. Naruto's eyes told him the girl had to have been at least 8 or 9, maybe 10 tops. The young girl in question was thrilled that someone had come to save her, but growled when he called her little. She was about to give him a tongue lashing. It's simple, really. She is going to be our village's new breeder. The Kumonin was obviously feeling rather cocky when they clearly outnumbered the fool before them. The Senju heir narrowed his eyes. Breeder. What does this girl mean to them that's so important? He asked himself. A breeder? He questioned. The team from Kumo looked at him like he was stupid. You being a shinobi from her village should know what she is. The man said. A very uneasy feeling was rolling around in his stomach. What she is? He wondered to himself. And what exactly is she? He asked. One of them was growling at him while the other 2 settled for leering. Simple, really. This girl is the last of the fabled Uzumaki clan, and with her we can breed an entire clan of Fuinjutsu masters to take down our enemies, starting with Konoha. The man said. Naruto was actually stunned. What? What does he mean by that? My answers will have to wait until I get back home, but first I'll deal with these guys. He thought to himself. Naruto shrugged. I see, then it appears I will have to take you 3 down and then take the girl there back home with me. He said confidently. Each man narrowed their eyes at him. Said girl blushed up a storm at his sudden confession of taking her home with him. One of the men snorted at this shinobi's proclamation. He was about to make a remark, but his words died in his throat. Seeing was believing, but he just couldn't believe what he was seeing, as a ghost from the past had come back. Why's hash see, he didn't finish as he was dead moments later. Naruto was going to capitalize on this opportunity and vanished. Each man was shocked by his appearance. He appeared before the first man, looked directly into his eyes, and attacked. Click. Naruto's blade exploded outward from his scabbard and was by far faster than what the enemy's eyes could track. The blade went towards the man's exposed neck and he was dead on the ground within seconds. One down, two to go. He thought to himself. He quickly resheathed his blade and now came to notice that the remaining two had regained their senses. Seeing one of their comrades fall before them would sometimes do that. Naruto would need them to drop their guard around the girl, she was his priority. I may have an idea. The youth did indeed have an idea, but it went against what his father and family stood for. Not only was your comrade weak, but dumb to get distracted by my appearance, but so must the village that produced such an idiot as him. He insulted the men in their home. That took a lot out of him as he wasn't used to verbal assaults. Each man roared in anger and blindly charged him. Looks like the plan worked. Naruto thought as he shook his head at just how easily it was to rile people up, even with his subpar insults. Regardless of what he thought about the tactic, it worked. Mokuton. Moku Bunshin no Jutsu, wood style. Wood clone, Naruto said silently as he made a single clone where it came out of a tree. He would have it take the girl away from here. Now to deal with these two. He thought, and with that the youth vanished once more only to reappear behind one of the men and gave him a hard kick to the man's back, prompting the shinobi to stumble forward. Naruto gripped his katana once more and attacked while in mid-flight. Aijiri, beheading, Naruto said. Naruto's katana flew forward in a powerful slash, again aiming to separate yet another head from their shoulders. The Kumo-nin just barely avoided his beheading and dodged the blade by throwing his head backwards forcefully, but left the rest of his body exposed. The raven-haired teen's feet landed on the exposed chest and he launched himself upwards with a tremendous amount of force. While he went up, the other man went down. There was no time to counter for the Kumo-nin as Naruto had already weaved through his hand-sealed suiton. Heron Bansham, water style. Stormy blockade, Naruto called out. Naruto began to summon a very large amount of water that formed just ahead of him, but directly above the enemy. The hammer was brought down and the water rushed downwards like a raging waterfall. It crushed the man beneath its weight. He landed a few feet away. Naruto nodded his head too down, he thought to himself. There was not time for him to make his next move as he quickly moved himself out of the way from the sudden attack. Brain. Jibashi, lightning style. Electromagnetic murder, the Kumo-nin called out. A wild wave of electricity traveled at frightening speed towards the water he had just summoned. The Kumo-nin was trying to electrocute him, but Naruto wouldn't let that happen. Acting quickly, he slashed at the ground in an angle and created a miniature wall of dirt to obscure himself. What a fool. Sneered the Kumo-nin, that's not going to block my attack. The man sneered. The powerful force of nature had covered the distance with the help of the water on the ground and it easily penetrated the wall. Laughing was all the Kumo-nin was doing as he watched his attack in a satisfied glee, but failed to recognize what was really going on. His laughter had suddenly stopped as pain was coursing throughout his entire body. The flow of chakra was cut off and his eyes traveled down towards his chest. Sticking out of his chest was the cold steel of the blade he just only recognized. His eyes were wide in fear, panic, and surprise as his head just couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. Moving his head back, he saw that it was the man who had just dispatched his two comrades. Naruto shook his head in disappointment. You failed to see behind the ruse. Clearly you knew that my defense would do me little good against your attack, yet you still went ahead and failed. Now you will answer my questions. Naruto demanded from the ninja. However, the ninja stayed silent. Naruto asked the first question. What village are you from? He demanded from the man. Naruto knew already thanks to the information his uncle left him, but he needed to hear it from the man's mouth. The man weakly answered Kumagakure. He told Naruto. Naruto nodded. And under whose order are you acting on? He asked. The man's weak answer reached his ears. The Sandame Reikage. He told Naruto. Now it was Naruto's turn to be surprised. Is the Reikage trying to incite war? The enemy below him was beginning to cough uncontrollably, almost like he was laughing. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. And just what's so funny? He growled out. The man laughed louder. You are. Did you really think I would just give you those answers without trying anything? I've been gathering my lightning chakra into one certain spot and I plan to release it all at once. He yelled insanely. His eyes widened. Shit. He's going to. However, he didn't finish as boom. Naruto had regained the memories of his wood clone. That technique really was useful as none of the Kumo-nin could tell the difference. Especially when he had switched. Now on his way back home, he looked down to the red head in his arms and he had to admit something to himself. She's not that bad on the eyes. He thought to himself. However, one thing bothered him the most and that was what he heard the man say. The girl had been in a bit of a daze after he had rescued her and had since calmed down. She even went as far as snuggling into his chest. That was how calm she was. He chuckled a bit at the sight, but it looked like his silent viewing was now over. She was stirring. She blinked a few times and then looked to him. "Oi, why am I in your arms like some defenseless princess?" she said as she began to struggle out of his firm grip and he had to let her go. Naruto tilted his head sideways. "Don't all little girls wish to be princess?" he asked her. His father had explained this to him one day. A lowly growl emanated from her throat. "Well, I don't. Now tell me who you are. I've never seen you in Konoha before." While she was asking him this, she couldn't get the thoughts of him taking her home out of her head. Now he was confused. Why is she blushing? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "I'm Senju Naruto," he said. "Senju, what's a member of an almost extinct clan doing all the way out here? Did he see my red hair that I left as clues?" she thought to herself. A very weird feeling was beginning to grow when she thought about that, and why do I feel so calm and even happy around him? She wondered. She eyed him very carefully. "Why exactly were you out here for?" she asked as she needed to be sure. Before he could answer, someone interrupted. "I would like an answer to that question as well," another voice said. Both teens looked up to see a boy with blonde hair looking at them. Said boy had his eyes trained solely on Naruto. The Senju heir could see recognition in the girl's eyes, so the boy was of no threat to him or her. "Like I was about to say. I actually don't know how I got here, but once I saw her in trouble all I could think of was getting her to safety," Naruto answered honestly, and the girl could tell he did, as it sounded very sincere. She was a bit sad he hadn't been there because of the clues she left behind, but once she heard how all he could think about was getting her to safety, that replaced her sadness, and she blushed even more. "I wasn't supposed to appear all the way out here. The little girl with red hair somehow had my scroll, which was actually supposed to be with my mother." Naruto muttered the last part. The blonde had heard though, and just who's your mo he started to ask, however he was interrupted by the redeed. "Hey." She cut off the blonde. "I'm not little, and my name is not girl," she said indignantly. She was going to deck him in his face if he called her that again. Naruto raised an eyebrow and decided to humor her. "Oh, then what's your name?" he asked. He had directed the question towards the girl, but the blonde answered as well. "Namikaze Minato," answered the now named Minato. The girl growled. "Minato? Shut up, he was asking me. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. The future Hokage. Tebane." The now named Kushina screamed her future to the heavens. Naruto couldn't help but be amused at her declaration. How interesting," he thought. Previously, Naruto had regained the memories of the wood clone he left behind to deal with the last of the Kumonin. It was one of his favorite techniques, none could tell the difference aside from his father. Now on his way back to Konoha, he looked down to the red-headed girl in his arms and he had to admit something to himself. "She's not bad on the eyes," he thought to himself. The girl in question had been in a bit of a daze after he had rescued her, but has since calmed down to the point of snuggling closer to him, blissfully unaware. He smiled at her and began to notice a few of her limbs were moving, she was beginning to stir. Her eyes were fluttering, and before he could react, her head shot upwards, nailing him straight on in the forehead, dropping her. "Ow!" They both cried out in pain. His father had always told him he had a hard head, but it seemed he found someone with a much harder one. She recovered first. She looked around, blinked, looked around some more and then spotted him. "Oi, why was I in your arms like some defenseless type of princess?" she growled out. By this point, he had recovered as well and just looked at her confusedly. "Do not all little girls wish to be princess?" he asked as he tilted his head sideways. His father had explained this to him a long time ago, and his father always spoke the truth, the man didn't lie very well. She gritted her teeth. "Well, I don't, now tell me who you are. I've never seen you in Konoha before," she asked him, clearly spotting the headband. He quirked an eyebrow. "Is this how you treat all of the people who save you?" he asked. The girl looked remorseful. "Thank you," she said in a very quiet voice. "I just have trouble trusting people after the last few minutes," she told him. Naruto shrugged. "You're welcome, and that's understandable," he replied. She gave him a nod. While she may not be as defensive around him, she still did not know why he was out there for. The redeed eyed him carefully. "Why exactly were you out here for?" she asked, needing to be sure he wasn't just another person ready to use her as well. Before he could answer, someone else interrupted their conversation. "I would like an answer to that question as well," a new voice asked. Both teens on the ground looked up to where they heard the voice coming from and found another teen with bright blonde hair looking at them, or more precisely, at him. Said teen was wearing black shinobi pants and sandals, along with a grayish jacket with 3 black lines from shoulder to wrist, along with a black headband. It was the symbol on the plate that stood out to the young Senju. "Konoha," he thought to himself. He looked over to ask the little redeed a question, but chose to remain silent. She was looking at the blonde teen with eyes full of recognition. Both of them knew one another in some fashion, it seemed. "Like I was about to say, I actually don't know where here is, but once I saw her in trouble all I could think of at the moment was her safety and well-being," he said, and both teens could hear the sincerity in his voice. The girl was a bit sad since he hadn't been there because of the clues she had left behind, but once he said he could think of nothing except her safety and well-being, she brightened up. "I wasn't supposed to appear all the way out here," he muttered. "The little redeed somehow had gotten a hold of my scroll, which is supposed to be with my mother," he stated. "And just who is your moth?" the blonde started but was cut off. "Hey," said the redeed, "I'm not little, and my name is not redeeder girl." She growled out she was going to deck him in the face if he called her that again. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her outburst and surrendered with his hands up. Then an amused smile came to his face. "Oh, and what's your name?" he asked. The blonde teen chose to answer, and quickly, before he got cut off again. "Namek is Minato," he introduced himself. Naruto nodded his head. "Senju Naruto," replied the Ravenet. "Minato? Shut up, he was asking me," yelled the redeed, glaring at the both of them. The now named Minato looked at her with a smile at her usual outbursts, then back to the other teen. "My name is Uzumaki Kushina, future Hokage of Konoha, Tebane," she shouted out her dream to the heavens. Naruto couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. How interesting. Now, the trio of teens, being led by Minato, were making their way back towards Konoha. Minato had said nothing of the teen appearance or why he looked like the Shodai Hokage. He would get answers when they returned. He was sure Kushina had no clue who Hashirama was, so he didn't even bother to ask her what she thought. An awkward silence had permeated the group until it was broken up. "Geez. Will one of you say something already? I can't stand this silence, it reminds me of a few hours ago." Kushina muttered the last part. Both teen males sent her a look of sympathy and then looked to one another. Naruto had no problem with the blonde teen, but it seemed his counterpart did not share the same feelings. But one look at the redhead and he knew the blonde would try to be somewhat civil towards him. He did not blame him. It would seem mighty suspicious for someone to just say they appeared from a scroll and that they're from Konoha. He could not fault him for doing his job as a shinobi of Konoha. Naruto decided to try and get the ball rolling. "So, Minato was it? How old are you?" he asked the blonde. Blue eyes narrowed at him. "I am currently 13 years old, and Naruto was it. How about yourself?" he asked in return. The raven-haired Senju brushed off the blonde gaze and snarky attitude. While figuring out his little game, he was trying to get information out of him. Each of them asks a question, they both receive answers. Naruto mentally shrugged, he could afford to give small snippets of info to Minato. "I'm actually a year older than you, I'm 14. He told the boy. Before Minato could respond, Kushina beat him to the punch. "Really? Then that means we're the same age, how cool is that? I've never had another friend the same age as me, all of the others are either a year younger or older than me besides Makoto-chan and Yui-chan." Kushina squealed in happiness. "Really?" asked Naruto and got a nod. "Then I will gladly be your third friend of the same age, and maybe you can introduce me to your other friends," he told the last of the Uzumaki. Naruto was hopeful she would. Sure, he had friends, but who knows what happened to them between the time he went into the scroll and now. If any of them were still alive, then there was a good possibility that they had moved on with their lives. He was basically alone in this world, not literally of course, but in terms of where he fit in. Kushina, along with Minato, noticed a forlorn look on his face when the mention of friends was brought up. The blonde said nothing but filed it away for later. The redeed, however, opened her mouth. She didn't know what compelled her to do it, but she did it anyway. "Are you okay?" she asked with concern evident in her voice as her hand reached out and rested atop his shoulder. He smiled at her, appreciating her trying to console him. "I'm fine, just wondering how much the village has changed anyways. Please do introduce me to your friends," he said to the redeed. A bit of pink dusted Kushina's cheeks when he smiled at her. "Of course, I can introduce you to my best friends in the whole village," she said as she exaggerated the size of the village with her arms. Naruto stifled a laugh. She acted exactly like his father would when he would try to animate something to you, using his hands, arms, and feet. It was an endearing trait found in innocent types of people. They were the ones who were not afraid to express themselves in any manner of ways. He was like that sometimes. Minato silently watched the two and wished to jump into the conversation, but he just couldn't find the right moment. He couldn't understand how two people who had only just met a few hours ago could have so much to talk about or in common. It wasn't like he didn't like the other male across from him, even he could see just how confused he was, but it was the logical side of him that needed to be sure. His friend, Kushina, could oftentimes be very trusting, and he just didn't want to see her get hurt. It was never easy seeing something like that. He suddenly thought of something. "Naruto," he called out to the teen, disrupting the conversation between the two and ignoring the pointed glare from Kushina. "Yes," Naruto responded. Minato looked to the Senju. "Before you were saying your mother's name. Who is she?" the blonde asked. Naruto grinned. Yes. My mother is Uzumaki Mido," he told the blonde. His proclamation was met with silence. Even Minato was struck silent. Kushina was gobsmacked. But how? You'd have to be over 1,000 years old. Exclaimed Kushina, clearly not being able to differentiate years. How was that even possible to begin with? I'm not that old and neither is my mother and never let her hear you say that. He chuckled, his mother would have thrown a fit. Minato calmed himself. Then how old are you really? Asked Minato, still having trouble believing this. Naruto shrugged. I'm 14 physically, but I know you mean something else. Let me ask you a question since you seem like the smartest one here. Naruto said to the blonde. Kushina didn't like that. Hey. She shouted at him. Naruto ignored Kushina's indignant cry. Just how long ago was the First World War? He asked. Surely it hadn't been that long since it was over, so he had to know that much. Minato loved to learn new things, but even his mind could not stretch that far back. He shook his head negatively and got a nod of acceptance from his traveling companion. He would need to head to the library to find out more. Well, when we can get that answer we will know. Said Naruto. Minato nodded and despite his misgivings, he was slowly opening up towards the teen opposite of him. He could relate in a way, he was an orphan, did not know what day he was born, nor who his parents were. His date of birth was just a random date someone had chosen for him, so he could somewhat understand the melancholy feeling the Ravenet was feeling, not knowing certain things that could reveal something to you. Maybe the Hokage will know. Kushina said offhandedly. Both males turned to the lone female in the group. Minato was mentally kicking himself for not thinking about that sooner. The Senju grinned. I take back what I said, you Kushina are the smartest person in this group. Said Naruto as he bowed down before her. Kushina sent a smug smile to Minato who was grumbling about something. Tell me more, tell me how awesome I am, how I'm the smartest woman on earth. She asked in a gloating tone of voice that was more playful than actual gloating. You're the smartest, toughest, grumpiest, strongest woman in all of the lands, along with your magnificent scarlet hair. Said Naruto. Don't call me grumpy. She said as she blushed a bit more due to his comment about her hair. Someone actually complimented her on her hair. Minato couldn't help it, he let out a small laugh at the two. Kushina looked to Minato. Did you just laugh? Asked Kushina. Minato however shook his head childishly. No. He told her. Kushina got in his face. Yes you did. She said in a sing-song voice. Minato denied it once again. No, I was coughing. It only sounded like laughing to you. He said, trying to cover himself. Someone in this group had to be the responsible one. It was like he was watching over two children. Before Kushina could press further, Naruto intervened, although he himself could see the similarities this group possessed to one he remembered back in the day. Minato acted like his uncle Tobirama, while Kushina acted more like his father, and he was the in-between, just like his mother. Although he couldn't help it and looked at Minato. Who's the Hokage anyway? He asked the blonde. That would be Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage. Replied Minato. That was a surprise. So with it he burst into laughter. Hiruzen. He was made Hokage, oh man, I can't wait to see him. I wonder how he looks now, probably a wrinkly old bag of bones. Said Naruto, laughing openly at his friend. Kushina and Minato were gaping at the disrespect the Senju teen before them was showing towards one of the most decorated shinobi of his time. And the way he said his name, almost as if they were equals on familiar footing. Looking at the shocked duo he couldn't help it. If the two of you don't close your mouths soon you're going to attract some Aburam insects. He laughed at their faces as their mouths shut abruptly. How can you talk about our Sandaime with such a lack of disrespect? Asked Minato, his voice beginning to rise a bit. Naruto just looked at him like he was stupid. Why shouldn't I? Hiruzen is one of my best friends, he and I grew up together. He said. It took a moment for their brains to register that and then it clicked. Of course they would know each other, especially if his story checked out. The two would know each other from when the villages were being established. If anyone can prove anything he's saying, then it would be Sandaime-sama. Minato believed this wholeheartedly, he would have his answers soon. Naruto decided to change the subject. So Minato, since you came out here alone, you must be very skilled, yes? Naruto asked the blonde. He got a nod. And you as well, right Kushina? He asked the reteed. He got a hesitant nod from her. Care to share a few of them? Asked Naruto. Both Minato and Kushina's eyes narrowed and before they could start accusing him of something, the Senju defended himself. I'm just curious is all. Kushina must be very skilled, aside from her being a Uzumaki, to have Kumo make an attempt at you. And you Minato must be very talented to have Hiruzen sent you out alone. Said Naruto as the two teens looked away, smiling to themselves at the compliments. Kushina was smiling brightly to herself while it appeared Minato wore one as well, he wasn't. He hadn't gotten permission to leave the village and just left on his own, he was in for some disciplinary action when he returned. I can share a few of mine with you. If you have a bloodline or something you do not wish to share that is fine. I just want to know more about my two new friends. Think of it as a sign of trust. Naruto's statement brought them back to reality. The Uzumaki nodded her head as she was glad to make another friend. Minato on the other hand just shook his head. How could he be considered a friend when they only just met? But regardless of what he just said, a bond of some sort had been created between the two. "I'll go first," Naruto said. "I have two affinities. Water and earth. I have a taijutsu style that focuses on soft and hard strikes, and I have a bloodline." He finished. Both teens who were listening perked up when he mentioned a bloodline, but were disappointed when he did not elaborate. Kushina as always lacked tact. "What's your bloodline?" she asked eagerly. Minato sighed. There was no way he would give. Naruto started to say. Both were surprised he was going to say. They leaned in closer. Naruto leaned in and spoke quietly. "We'll tell you later," he said quietly. Both face faulted. Naruto laughed at their expressions openly. Minato had gotten up and turned away from the laughter. He was mildly embarrassed he had fallen for something like that. Of course he wouldn't give out info like that. Kushina had gotten up herself and instead of acting embarrassed, she pouted like a child instead. "Jokes aside, are you going to share?" he asked. Kushina, who had gotten over his joke, spoke first. "I only have one affinity and it's for water. I'm more of a brawler type of fighter, and I know some kinjutsu," she explained. She wasn't going to talk about her own little type of bloodline, which made her the perfect choice for being a representative for the Uzumaki clan. Naruto perked up at her mentioning kinjutsu. "What type of kinjutsu?" he asked curiously. That was one thing he had forgotten to mention. "I was learning the basics of the Uzumaki Rick before she trailed off." He wasn't going to ask why she had trailed off. "It's a small world, isn't it? I know the Uzumaki Rick myself. I can teach you if you want along with your water affinity," he offered the redeed. Kushina was ecstatic. "Really?" she exclaimed in excitement. He nodded his head yes, showing he would. "Thank you so much." In her excitement she gave him a hug. Naruto blushed a bit himself as he felt her developing chest press against his body. He hasn't had much interaction with girls his age, so this was something new for him. "You're welcome," he replied as he composed himself. Kushina realized what she did and backed off, her own blush deepening a bit. "Sorry," she muttered. Naruto nodded. "How about you, Minato?" he asked the blonde. The blonde hesitated for a moment before answering. "I have two affinities. Wind and lightning. I'm a hit and run type of attacker and I'm pretty fast," said Minato, trying to give as little as he could. The Senju teen nodded his head. It was unfortunate that he couldn't show him anything due to him not knowing any Futon or Raiten techniques, but perhaps they could spar. "I probably should have asked this earlier, but who are your senseis? Maybe I know them or of them?" asked Naruto. "Who knows? I'm an apprentice, so I didn't get assigned to a team," answered Kushina. "Who's your teacher?" he asked her. Kushina looked away and mumbled something. He didn't hear her. "What was that?" he asked her. "I said your mother is my teacher," she yelled out. In midst of all the surprises they had gotten, she had forgotten to mention that she did know his mother. "Really?" Naruto couldn't wait to get to Konoha now. "This is great, maybe I can get the answers I need from her." He thought two would find out soon enough. He looked to Minato. "How about you, Minato?" he asked. Minato shrugged. "Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin," he answered the Senju. "Legendary 3 ninja. What exactly did they do to earn such a title?" he wondered to himself. Naruto was confused and it showed. "Come on, you know Jiraiya of the Sannin," Minato said, saying the man's name. He got a negative head shake. "I'm afraid not," he told Minato. "Well, you'll probably meet him at some point since you probably know one of his teammates," Minato said offhandedly. "Who?" he asked. "Senju Tsunade," Minato told him, shocking the Ravenet. "Now wait, what? Little Tsu-chan is a legendary ninja," exclaimed Naruto. "She isn't really all that little though." Both Minato and Kushina had the same thoughts as the girl patted her chest, and the boy had a faraway look on his face. Naruto shrugged off their looks. "So how much longer till we reach Konoha?" he asked. Familiarity and awe. Those were the two emotions Naruto felt once he laid eyes on his home from afar. It felt so familiar to him, but it also felt different, almost alien. It was by far much bigger than he remembered it to be. In his mind it couldn't really even be called a village anymore, it was more akin to a city. His jaw had actually dropped, but thankfully was lifted back up by a petite hand. "If you don't close your mouth you will attract some aburum insects," laughed Kushina, "especially this close to the village." Naruto found mirth in her statement. The tables had turned, it seemed. "Halt." A voice called out to the trio of ninjas, causing them to stop. The trio did as told. Since they were coming up to the gate, they needed to identify themselves. The blonde went first. "Namikaze Minato, genin of Konoha, ID number 000685. He said, signing into the gate. The two guards checked their sheets and found his number. "Next," the man said, and Kushina stepped forward. "Uzumaki Kushina, genin of Konoha, ID number 000725. She said, handing them her number. She checked out, they looked to the next and did a double take. Senju Naruto, genin of Konoha, id number 000250. Naruto said seriously. He would not lie to the guards as they were there when he was little. They must not have heard him, they were in shock. Hashirama-sama. They exclaimed. The two guards were a few of the lucky youngsters back in the day who had personally met the Shodai when he was alive. It had left a profound effect on them and soon joined the ranks. They couldn't believe they were meeting him again. "Oh no, I'm not," Naruto tried to say, however help came just in time. "We will take it from here," a voice said, gaining their attention. The group at the gate turned to see four Anbu drop down before them and suddenly kneel before Naruto. "It is good to see you again, Senju-sama," stated the obvious leader. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Did he know this person? It was possible, but he didn't remember making any friends in the Anbu, and that was because he wasn't there when they were established. He only even knew of them thanks to the information left by his uncle in the scroll. He closed his eyes, trying to feel the person chakra. It was something he had been shown by his father. All life used yang, or the physical energy, and humans were no different from their mokutin, which was composed of life. He had learned how to differentiate them from his uncle Tobirama. That man was an even more gifted sensor than his father. Reaching out, he felt it as a small flame that only grew warmer the further he went in. He knew the man across from him personally. He took a step forward, ignored the tensing of the others, bent down and whispered, "It's good to see you again, Kagami," with a smile on his face. It had been too long. The man didn't say yes, but gave him a barely noticeable nod. He was curious though and couldn't help it. "How did you know I was at the gate?" he asked the Uchiha. Kagami chuckled. "My unit was patrolling the village and I saw your old armor along with your appearance. You're not very hard to miss," he told the Senju heir who he hadn't seen in 30 years. The Senju supposed it was true. Not many had a resemblance to either himself or his father. So what now? He wondered aloud. Kagami spoke. "I need to take you to see Hokage-sama," stated Kagami before looking at the other four. "You too as well," he told the other genin as he motioned for Minato and Kushina. "The two of you however will keep quiet about this until Hokage-sama addressed this. Am I clear?" Kagami said more than asked. The two guards nodded vigorously. Kagami smiled under his mask. "Good, let's go," he said. Kagami placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and they silently vanished via body flicker, leaving no sound nor any residue of them ever being there. The others followed suit, too, grabbing the blonde and red head, but still leaving a few pieces of leaves. The two guards were still in shock that it wasn't their Shodai but his son. That shock was soon replaced with something else: elation. Hashirama's legacy had returned. Things were finally looking up for the Leaf, and soon the whole world would witness the rise of the Senju clan once again. Enemies of Konoha beware, the last wielder of the Mokutin had finally returned home. Hokage office. The lone man sat in a large office overlooking most if not all of the village. He would rather be out and about, walking and greeting his people than stuck in an office doing paperwork. Had he known that this was part of his duty, he wouldn't have taken the mantle from his sensei. A sigh escaped his lips. He often found himself reminiscing about his sensei and his family, specifically his nephew, Naruto. No one, not even him, had known what had happened to his friend. Some speculated he had been killed while out on his mission, others said he abandoned his home and friends for another village. Safe to say that those people had met with the end of his fists. Granted, it was an immature thing to do, but he was a young lad who was waiting for a friend to return. He would not allow someone to badmouth a friend of his. They really could have used him not only in the Second World War, which had ended around a year ago, but also in the First. He would have been a game changer, as the youngsters say, and they may not have lost Senju Tobirama to the Kinkaku force. If having his sensei there with him would mean him giving up his title of Hokage, he would do so in a heartbeat. How he dearly missed the man, but that was then, and just wishing for something doesn't mean it will happen. He wanted to pass down the mantle of Kage, but he couldn't find any worthy enough of it right now. He did have a few in mind though. Granted, he was still young by the standards of today, but having fought and survived 2 wars ages a person beyond belief. The second especially had taken its toll on him. He was not there to fight alongside them, but his 3 students made him proud that day, the day they stood tall against a man even he himself would have trouble with, Handsome of the Salamanders. He had of course read the reports, but when he got first-hand details from his students, he was surprised but not really. He was surprised that a man such as Handsome would let them go and even bestow upon them a title, but he was not surprised they had survived. They had great teamwork amongst themselves when they were kids, but even more so when they became adults and could follow orders properly. His reminiscing had been cut short by the sudden knock on his door. He didn't remember inviting anyone or there being any appointments. He shrugged. Whatever it was had to be better than his paperwork. "Enter," he ordered. His eyebrow rose a tad, and walked one of his more decorated Anbu operatives and one of his best friends, Kagami. Why would the man need to knock if he could just appear in front of him whenever he had something to say? The man had joined up with the shadows after the first war had ended, stating that he, as new Hokage, would need someone to watch his back from the shadows, and who better than a man with a Sharingan. Hiruzen had no doubt the man would flourish, and he did, much better than his friend Danzo probably would have. His other best friend was stuck in the ways of the past and in his honest opinion would be too rigid or stiff when it came to adapting to new situations that the Black Ops constantly had. What was the matter with the man? What's the matter, Genzum, illusion? He asked the Anbu. Hiruzen had decided to give his friend the name of a concept rather than an animal. Concepts would last throughout time, long after all of them had passed on. And what better way to name someone after something they were so good at casting? Okage-sama, we have located Uzumaki Kushina. He told his leader. Hiruzen became serious in a matter of seconds. Explain. It was not a question. How had he not known of this? From what we have been told, the girl had been abducted by a squad of Kumonin to be taken to their village and used as a breeder. Kagami said to Hiruzen. Hiruzen growled to himself, damn it, you would risk starting another war so soon? He asked himself. Sarutobi cursed the Sandaime Raikage for his reckless and stupid decision. Who saved Kushina? He asked. Mito would need to be informed of this as she was head of the clan or what was left of it and Kushina still fell under her jurisdiction. He just hoped she wouldn't bite his head off for the lack security, which would be tightened. Kagami did not say the person's name but instead ushered them in. After all, he did not want to ruin the surprise. The first person to walk in was said victim. Hiruzen breathed a sigh of relief as the girl looked shaken but overall fine. He would have a talk with her later to see if she wanted to talk about the situation. A mop of blonde hair walked in next. The Sandaime could honestly say he wasn't surprised to see it was him who had saved her. He was a very gifted shinobi who would go on to do great things, he could see it as the boy calmly walked in taking in everything. Minato, well, I thank you for rescuing Kushina. He didn't finish as a new person made himself known. Yo. Seru. Interrupted a voice. Hiruzen bristled at the casual nickname. No one aside from his teachers and best friends could call him that. Who was? His words died in his throat, he couldn't even form them. Standing in front of him was a person he had thought to never see again. It wasn't his teacher, Hashirama, even though the resemblance was uncanny, it was his son, his best friend, Naruto. And Naruto, is that why you? He asked, completely forgetting about Kushina and Minato for the moment. Sure is, Seru, it's good to see another familiar face, although a bit older than I remembered. He remarked with a twinkle in his eye. Naruto. Hiruzen exclaimed happily, and with that the Sandaime Hokage jumped out from his seat and gave a man who he had thought never to see again a hug. It was returned. Minato and Kushina really couldn't contain their shock anymore, everything he had said was indeed true. Then that meant he was the son of not only Uzumaki Mito, but of Senju Hashirama as well, along with being related to Tobirama and his own daughter, Tsunade. Something inside of Kushina's head clicked when this all came together. If you are related to Mito-sama, then that means you're in Uzumaki as well. No sooner did that realization hit that she ran forward and enveloped him in a tight hug with tears in her eyes. She had just found another Uzumaki aside from herself and his mother. It was more family. Naruto wasn't sure why she was crying about him being half Uzumaki, but he shrugged and returned the affections. He would ask Hiruzen about it. He is only half Uzumaki, the other half is Senju blood. Stated Minato as he pieced things together. Doesn't matter. Replied Kushina. Naruto, Hiruzen said. The raven-haired Senju turned to see that it was Hiruzen who called him. The man had just finished getting the report of just where Kagami and his group had found him. What's up? Naruto asked. We need to have a talk, but first he turned towards the only blonde. Minato, I understand that you wanted to help a friend and you have my thanks for bringing her and Naruto back home. However, you left the village without permission and you could have not only gotten yourself killed but Kushina as well. He said. This caused Minato to lower his head. However, Hiruzen continued, however, considering that you all came back unharmed, I am going to lessen the penalty a bit. He said, causing Minato to raise his head. Minato grimaced. What is the penalty, Hokage-sama? He asked Hiruzen. Hiruzen grinned. 4 months of D-rank missions. I was originally going to give you and your team 6 months, but felt it would do me little good to have one of my better genin teams on the sidelines for so long. I will inform your sensei of this, you are dismissed. He ordered. A sigh escaped the blonde's mouth. Hi Hokage-sama. I'll see you later Kushina, you as well Naruto. I want to talk more to you. Bye. He said. Bye-bye. Waved Kushina. But bye. Said Naruto, who gave him a nod. With that Minato left the office. Hiruzen couldn't help but smile. It seemed Naruto was already making fast friends with the up-and-coming shinobi of this generation. His smile dropped as he looked at Kushina. He felt bad for the girl and the situation she had been placed in. She was like a daughter to him and his wife Bawako, who absolutely adored the girl. He already had 2 sons, but he and his wife had been trying for a daughter for a while, but no such luck until they had met Kushina. He may have thought of her like that, but she thought more of him like an uncle. It didn't really matter to him, as long as she was happy, it was okay with him. He looked to the retreat and questioned Kushina. He spoke in a softer voice. She turned to look at him as she was still holding on to Naruto. Can you please let Naruto go for the moment? There are some things I need to talk to him in private. He told her gently. She looked mortified by the idea but she tried to plead, even going as far as making her lower lip tremble. However, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage was ready. Please. The magic word he knew would work with her, you can talk to him and show him around while introducing him to your friends when we're done here. Okay. He told her. Kushina looked outside of the window and realized that it would soon be morning, almost getting kidnapped and being out in the woods made her lose track of time. She gave him a nod and gave Naruto one last hug. I'll see you later, okay? Bye-bye. She said to him. Goodbye. Said Naruto as he turned to face his friend who had been waving her bye as well. And then she was gone. The two looked at one another for a few seconds before Naruto spoke in a very serious tone. Hiruzen causing his friend to get serious as well. Yes. Hiruzen asked just as serious. Naruto held up 2 fingers 2 things. He asked the man. Hiruzen nodded his head to him. First off, why was Kushina so excited to find out that I was part Uzumaki? He asked. The aged leader sighed, even after all this time, his friend was still very perceptive of things. When I first came back I heard that Kushina was the last of the Uzumaki. Naruto said to his friend, did something happen to the Uzumaki clan? He asked unsurely. Hiruzen did not answer immediately and instead called over Kagami while whispering something to the man. He soon vanished to accomplish whatever he had been sent to do. The Sandaime looked to his friend and began to recall old memories. Naruto could feel the regret and sorrow rolling off of Hiruzen at this point. What has happened to them is a long and tragic tale, but one I feel you must be told along with the events since your disappearance had begun. Naruto had not often found himself crying. He cried when his father had passed away and he cried when he met Tsunade for the first time. Those were the only 2 times he had done so, but just in the last hour he had cried the most. So much had happened, so much death. Tobirama Ojisan uncle, Tumka aunt, Karen Kenshin, the entire Senju and Uzumaki clans and Iwaki gone forever. He thought to himself, clearly upset by what he had been told. He felt sad knowing he had another cousin, and granted he may have been born from another woman, but he was still family, it had explained his light brown hair. He died far too young, and then there was Tsunade and her reactions to not only her half-brother loss, but that of her lover. Naruto's next stop would be her, and after that it would be off to his mother. Why? Asked Naruto. Why what? Hiruzen asked his friend confused. Why would anyone want to destroy the Uzumaki clan? They were a neutral clan. They separated from the Senju clan to avoid the fighting. Naruto growled out. Hiruzen sighed, he had asked himself the same question. People are afraid of what they don't understand. Only a few people outside of Uzu and even our village truly understood the complicated art known as genjutsu. He told Naruto. He shrugged and continued, the other villages saw them as a threat, not only for their prodigious skill in the sealing arts, but if they ever joined the war to help us, then we may have reigned supreme over them. They feared that more than anything, it would upset the natural balance of power. He sighed out. Naruto growled, which villages? More of a statement than a question. The Sandaime looked at his friend for a long moment, trying to see the reason for him asking such a question. Kumo and Iwa. He told the male Senju. Naruto took in a deep breath and released, thank you for answering my friend. He sighed out to the old man. Hiruzen waved it off as nothing, not at all. What do you plan on doing now? He asked his friend. Well, Naruto began only for to be interrupted by knocking on the door. Naruto was interrupted by 2 knocks on the door and without being allowed entry, which Naruto noted, walked in. What did you wish to speak to us about? Hokage saw a familiar voice began only for the voice to come to a screeching halt. While this happened, 2 people Naruto easily recognized, but as the same with Hiruzen, they were much older, walked through the door. With a grin he greeted his friends Yo, Himura, Kaharu. Greeted Naruto. Thud. Thud. Naruto and Hiruzen both sweat dropped, the 2 counselors of the Hokage had fainted. Naruto grinned, it seems their old age has caught up with them, Hiruzen. Joked Naruto as Hiruzen chuckled a bit as well. The sound of shuffling feet could be heard once more, the door creaked open, allowing 2 more people to try and enter the room. The bodies of the 2 former were blocking the door a bit. Yo, here is a cheerful voice greeted only to follow the first 2's trail. What do you want, Naruto? A 4th voice said, but it too stopped. With a wave Naruto greeted the last of his friends who looked better than he thought. Yo, Tarifu, Dansm. Thud. Tarifu followed the example of his 2 friends who were already on the floor, and it was rather bad luck for them as well, and Akimichi was laying on top of them. Ouch, they sure are going to be sore tomorrow. Thought Naruto with sympathy. Naruto looked from the unconscious bodies to the one who was able to hold off his shock, but only by a bit. The raven-haired teen could see from his lone widened eye that he too was in a bit of shock, awe, and was that fear. "Hello, Dansm, hello." Naruto waved trying to snap him out of his daze. It wasn't working, he turned back to Hiruzen. As funny as this was, he had other things to attend to before catching up. "As I was saying before, I have a few people to visit. I know that when these four gather their wits, they will ask you questions. Give them the information I shared with you, but not all of it, they aren't my Hokage, only you, and only you are privy to that information. If you absolutely need me, then come and get me, but if you don't, then I will come and see you in a few days. See you later, Hiruzen." Naruto said his piece, got up from his seat, gave a nod to Kagami, and began to walk over the bodies of his old friends. He briefly glanced at his other friend. "Goodbye for now, Dansm," he said to the scarred man with a small wave. Snapped out of his shock, he was able to respond. "Why yes, you as well, Senju-sama," he said. Naruto frowned at that, they were still friends, right? But then again, Dansm was always one for the formalities. He shrugged and then he was gone, off to see more of the village and meet with his family. He could hardly contain himself as he was excited to see her after all this time. No sooner had the long-lost Senju gone did Dansm snap out of his shock. He marched right up to his rival. "Hiruzen, explain now," he ordered. Kagami heard the order and tone and was about to bark one himself to his friend, but his leader beat him to it. "Watch your tone, Dansm, I am leader of this village. Do not order me around, I will explain as soon as Kagami awakens our friends," explained Hiruzen as his tone returned to normal. This was not something his friend was going to try and force, he would not let him. He was going to explain this once and only once. Dansm was annoyed by this, but wisely kept his mouth shut. He could tell when something would not go his way, that in going by Kagami body language, he would have jumped in as well. And the others were beginning to stir. Tarifu was the first to get up since he was on top while the others were still on the ground but were coherent enough to hear what Hiruzen had to say. "Oh Okami, that wasn't who I thought it was, was it?" asked Tarifu on wobbly legs trying to hold his weight. Homura and Kaharu were praying he could or else they would be crushed once more. "It wasn't, I have info," he didn't get to finish as thud. The Akamichi leader fainted once again in shock, falling once more onto the downed elders. "Ow." Both Homura and Kaharu cried out in pain as their already aching bodies were once more crushed under the heavy weight of their friend. "DCH, damn it, Tarifu, get your fat ass up already." Dansm growled out, having lost his cool for the first time in a long while. It was very understandable. 2 little words had gotten the man up. "What did you just call me, you one-eyed mummy bastard?" yelled Tarifu. A sigh escaped Hiruzen's lips, "He's only back in the village for 2 hours and already he's giving me a headache by dealing with this, which is indirectly his fault," he thought to himself. The yelling continued into the day. As Naruto walked around the village, he was getting various looks from the people he passed. They were either laughing at him for his odd a few of the buildings he was looking into, like the place that was baking bread that wasn't there last time. Or they just stared at him like he was something out of a history book. He waved to a few ladies who were watching him from afar and they began to giggle amongst themselves. Naruto shuddered a bit and decided to keep on walking. He found a few weapons shops, a market, a thing called a theater where they played things called movies. There were even things called televisions, stoves, and radios. He was taking in so much information that his head was beginning to spin. Luckily he was stopped from toppling over by someone holding his back with their 2 hands. He turned around to thank the person but was surprised to see 4 instead of 1 and he was familiar with the one. "Are you okay, Naruto?" asked Kushina. Naruto, "Ugh yeah, just let me get some fresh air." Naruto was dry heaving but began to breathe in and out, exaggerating every time he took in air and every time he let it out. It caused the other girls with Kushina to giggle. Hearing their giggling prompted Naruto to look their way. He stopped what he was doing, stood straight, dusted himself off, and introduced himself. "Hello there, my name is Senju Naruto. A pleasure to meet you," he told the 3 girls, kissing the palm of their hands. This stopped their giggling and they each blushed a bit. This action elicited a growl from Kushina. "He didn't do that to me when we met," she thought to herself. "Hello Kushina-chan, is anyone there?" asked the first dark-haired girl. Obviously twins from how similar they looked. "Huh? Oh, sorry. Naruto, let me introduce you to my best friends. The first one here is the clan heiress of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Mikoto," she said. And then motioned to the other girl, "And this is her twin sister Yui," she said to Naruto. Naruto stared at Mikoto taking her form in, her eyes and hair as dark as night, 2 bangs on each side framing her cheeks and fair skin. She wore black sandals with matching pants and a blue top with her clan crest embroidered on top. "It's nice to meet you, Mikoto-san," greeted Naruto. The only other Uchiha he ever had contact with was Kagami and once with Madara. "Likewise." replied Makoto with a wink. Makoto couldn't lie to herself, she was physically attracted to the senju teen in front of her. She was getting to the age where she was checking out the opposite sex. Sure, she keeps up her training, she has to being the heiress and all, but that doesn't mean she can't be a girl once in a while. Plus it would spite the clan elders and that asshole Fugaku if she was dating a senju. Naruto then turned to the twin sister, and it is a pleasure to meet you, Yui-san. Naruto said as he took her hand and gave it a kiss like he had done her sister. He also took in Yui's very lovely form. She looked exactly like her sister, having the black hair with blue tint typical of the Uchiha clan. She wore a single-sleeved long zip-up coat-like shirt showing her midsection, under which she wears a pair of short leggings. She has her ninja pack on her right thigh and a pair of knee-high shinobi sandals. She wears her forehead protector as a belt and her left arm is covered in shinobi wrappings, under which is a summoning tattoo. After releasing the girl's hand, he turned to the last of the girls. And this is Konan, she is the adopted daughter of Jiraiya of the Sannin, stated Kushina, introducing the last girl. Naruto was once more left breathless as he gazed into the grey eyes of the brunette before him. Her eyes were like storm clouds ready to unleash their fury upon the world, while a beautiful blue flower rested atop her hair. She was wearing simple clothing, a dark blouse with a skirt bottom and orange nails. But the most striking feature was her piercing, he had never seen anyone with one before and it looked good on her. She was a real beauty like Makoto and her twin sister Yui. This was also the second time he had heard this Jiraiya's name and was curious as to what kind of man he was. He had to be kind to take in a child that he hadn't fathered. Greetings, Konan-san. This Jiraiya must be a great man to take you in from the Konoha orphanage, said Naruto. Konan nodded, she then looked to the other two and they all broke out into an uncontrollable laughter. He was confused, did he say something wrong? Konan was the first to stop laughing, he didn't adopt me from this village. He found me in a megacure among some wreckage during the Second War. I was looking for two of my friends, but I couldn't find them. Even after he helped me search for a few days, she was getting teary-eyed as she was retelling this. Naruto acted fast. That makes him a great man then, he took you from the battlefield and now look at you. A beautiful girl with a great smile and two best friends who would do anything for you. He said, hoping it would take her mind off what she was trying to explain. It worked as she blushed a bit more as well and missed another growl from Kushina. She was smiling again as she thought of her pseudo-father. Kushina pushed whatever she was feeling away. All three girls then looked to one another as they all faced him. He is a great man, started Konan as she nodded her head agreeing with him. Naruto agreed and was about to say something but was cut off. And a pervert of the highest degree, finished Kushina, Makoto and Yui. The senju teen raised an eyebrow, a pervert? He asked the girls. Ah, but not a simple pervert my dear Naruto. Konan shook her head. Then what is he? He asked. He wished he hadn't. All four of the girls spoke at once. He's a super pervert, they chorused merrily, slinging an arm around each other's shoulders before laughing at the way they said the words. Achoo. Somebody must be talking about me. The man thought. A tall white-haired male sneezed, alerting all those in the hot springs of his presence. He needed to think up something quick. He cleared his throat, meow meow. He began trying to throw the lovely women off his trail. Oh, it's just a cat, a woman said. Crisis averted. He breathed a sigh of relief. The women continued to wash themselves of all the sweat and grime they had accumulated from the day. That's right, continue on with what you were doing my precious. He tapped his fingers together creepily. He then began to cough uncontrollably, like something was trying to escape his throat. Naruto shook his head and decided to change the subject. His mother would tear him a new one if she found out he was talking about perverted things. Do any of you know where the hospital is? He asked them. Why? Konan asked him. Because I want to see Tsu-chan. He said with a smile. Who? Asked Makoto and Yui in unison. You know her as Senju Tsunade, she's my cousin. He told them. You're related to Tsunade-sama. Screeched Konan and the twins, they were all big fans of hers. She was what they aspired to be like, a woman who takes nothing from no one and can dish it out just as hard as men. He nodded his head slowly and unsurely towards them. That's right. Naruto didn't see what the big deal was. Can we come with you? They all chorused. Fine, let's go. Sighed Naruto. Konoha Hospital. Senju Tsunade was not have a good day today. After finishing a surgery that required she be awake for 3 hours and a lack of food in her stomach, she was irritable. The next person who so much as looked at her funny would be in for a world of hurt. For the life of her, she couldn't understand why she was still in this accursed village, especially after everything it has taken from her. Maybe it had something to do with fulfilling something to her long since deceased family, but whatever it was starting to run thin. All she needed was one more thing to go wrong and she would be gone, never to return to this place. Contrary to what some people had perceived of her, she had no real fear of blood. She was a medical nin for God's sake. She had been traumatized not by blood, but by a fear of being all alone in the world. She had never met her mother, then after her it was her uncle Hashirama who left her, then it was her favorite cousin Naruto who suddenly disappeared, then her own father left her. It only kept increasing as her stepmother went next, followed by her lover cat Dan, and then her baby brother, Nawaki. And she hadn't even brought up her clan, she was the only member of the Senju clan left. Granted, she still had Kushina and Mito, them being cousins to the Senju, but it just never really felt like any of them connected, even if Mito and her lived in the same compound. Perhaps the age differences were too much for them to overcome. The only person whom she leaned on was her apprentice, a young girl she had decided to take care of, the niece of Dan, Shizune. She didn't know what she would do if she ever lost that girl. I guess I better try and get some sleep, who knows when they might call for me again, she thought to herself. Just as her eyes were closing, her door slammed open, snapping her eyes open and making her even angrier. "Tsunade-sama," yelled Shizune. "What do you want, Shizune?" Tsunade growled out. She hated when she was this close to falling asleep only for something or someone to wake her up. Especially if she had been trying for a while. Shizune gulped at her master tone of voice and knew it would only be a matter of seconds before she popped. "There is a group of teens in the reception area saying they want to see you," she started to say only for the blonde to wave her off. "Send them away, I don't have time for any brats right now," she told her apprentice. But Shizune stuttered. "Send them away," she yelled. "Tsunade-sama, one of them said he was a Senju," she said. That had roused the woman from her trying to gain any sleep. She marched out of her room and headed towards the front. If this was all some ploy, then she would make sure whoever did wish they had never been born. "How many times do I have to repeat myself? I am Naruto Senju, son of Hashirama Senju himself, which means that I'm a member of the Senju clan and Tsunade's cousin," Naruto said as he kept trying to tell the nurse in charge, but she didn't even bat an eyelash at him. "Eyed and my chest is bigger than Tsunade-sama's," the woman said. The 4 teenage girls all looked down to see her chest and snorted. They saw nothing but mosquito bites. "How rude," she cried out as she heard them snickering and slapped Naruto, even though he didn't look. "Yo," he yelled out in pain. "That'll teach you to laugh at a woman's misfortune," she screeched. But he started to say only for Mikoto to interrupt him. "Look, just let us talk to her, we only need a few minutes of her time," said Mikoto, who unlike her 2 friends and sister, had no problem with getting in someone's face about something. She was slowly turning them to her way of thinking. "I told you already, you can't," she tried to say, however she was cut off as the double doors that led further into the hospital, which was staff only, blew open and revealed 2 women. Naruto paid little attention to the young lady in the back, his eyes were focused on the beautiful woman with honey blonde hair tied into pigtails. He could tell it was her by her eyes. Just when did the little girl who he always played with become this woman? She was just perfect, with rather large assets. What the fuck? He took his mind and eyes off of there, this was his cousin for God's sake. He calmed down and kept staring at her face, affection in his eyes. He smiled at her as he faced her fully, his smile grew when he saw tears in her eyes, clearly she had recognized him. "And Naruto, is that why you?" she asked, tears stinging her eyes, legs getting shaky. "I'm home, Tsu-chan," he said to his cousin. "Naruto." Tsunade yelled happily and flung herself towards him and enveloped him in a bone-crushing hug. He was a bit miffed, noticing she was just a bit taller than him, but he shrugged. He returned her hug. "It's good to see you again, Tsu-chan," he told the blonde. She nodded, her head buried in his shoulder. "I missed you so much, why?" she asked him. He said more as a statement than a question. "Why did you leave everyone, why did you leave me?" she cried a bit. Naruto released a tired sigh and looked at her with sad eyes. "That is a long story, but one I fear you must know. Let us talk somewhere more private," he said to his cousin. She nodded and told Shizune not to bother her or Naruto for a few hours. The 2 soon left to her office. "Hey!" shouted the girls, he had completely forgotten about them. "What the fuck? And that's all that's happened with me and the last 25+ years," Naruto said. Tsunade had just finished explaining how things had gone for her and all that she had lost. Naruto could hear the disdain in her voice for the village. Perhaps with him coming back she would feel less lonely and the burden of being the last Senju or heir. He would gladly take over the role so as to let her continue her work at the hospital, which he believed was more important than deciding clan affairs. She was saving lives here. "Well, with me here you are no longer alone. We now have each other and we can begin to move forward," he told her. She gave him a sad smile. "I don't know, Otoko, cousin, this village has taken much from me, I don't know if I can continue," she said upset. "That is understandable, Tsu-chan, but do you not think it has done the same to me, yet I still persevere," he told his cousin. She gave him a confused look. My father has been taken from me, my uncle, Takahabasan, Nawaki, both Senju and Uzumaki clans, and I did not have the chance to see you grow into the strong and beautiful woman before me. As you can see, this village and life has taken much from me as well. If I can rise above it, then so can you," he said, offering her his hand as he stood up. Tsunade flinched, she hadn't thought much about the Uzumaki clan, nor her aunt Mka, and he was right, he had missed a lot of things that he would never get to experience. Tsunade looked at him for a long moment, obviously thinking very hard about this. After a few more seconds, she gave him a smile. "You're right, I can rise above this. What would my family think of me if they saw me now?" she said, sighing. "I'm sure they would be proud of the decision you're making right now," he responded. She gave him another hug. "Oh, that reminds me. There are some girls outside wanting to meet you, they are some of the first new friends I have made here. Can you go out and talk to them?" he asked. She smiled at him. "Anything for you, Naruto," she told him. "Thank you Tsu-chan, oh and before I forget, I want to ask you something," he said. "Shoot," she said. "How do you become a legendary ninja when you clearly lost?" asked Naruto smirking, this handsome character sounded like he would be a great challenge. Tsunade's smile vanished as soon as she heard the question. Many had asked her and her teammates why they are considered legendary if they lost the fight and were allowed to live. "Why me?" she groaned as she tried to come up with something reasonable. Complete horseshit if she ever thought about that fight. Kushina, the twins, and Konan were in a dream-like euphoria. They were talking with a woman all girls wanted to be like when they grew up, Tsunade of the Sannin. Sure they have seen her walking the streets a few times, but they were always nervous to try and talk to her or afraid they may say something dumb and embarrass themselves. They were talking with the Senju Tsunade. Naruto found it amusing, they revered his cousin, yet they didn't do anything of the sort when they talked about Jiraiya. Aren't they both part of the Sannin? He shook his head, he needed to go to one more place and felt a little guilty about doing it last, making her wait. I hope mother isn't mad since she was last on my list. He thought to himself. He began to walk away bringing all of the female eyes onto him. Where are you going? Tsunade asked. I have one more place to visit and one more person to talk to, my mother. He told his cousin. Ah, I see. Come on girls, let's leave Naruto alone for a while and I'll show you some interesting things, said the blonde Senju. The girl's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer before they nodded. Naruto thanked his cousin with a nod of his head. He focused his chakra and vanished. Time to see her after all this time. Senju compound. Nostalgia ran from head to toe as he took in the still beautiful compound his father had built. The trees, plants, and all of nature still flourished, he could feel it, it was just brimming with life. His mother was no different, still alive with so much energy. He breathed in and out a few times before taking a step forward and twisting the doorknob to his home. The door creaked open. I'm home. He called out. There was no reply, but he did hear something and it was coming closer. The door in the back of the house opened up and out walked a very old woman, probably in her late 60s or early 70s. It was his mother. She stopped and just looked at him, a lone tear rolled down her face. Welcome home my son, she said. Naruto and his mother sat in the den in silence as he digested everything she had told him. It seemed she had not been forthcoming all those years ago about what each of them really saw in those visions of theirs. Apparently in hers, she saw him using the Kikbi's chakra and it was this sign that told her to do as she did. So far she had only brought the redeeted Uzumaki teen to the leaf. He would be receiving the fox at a later time. Ah-chan, how can you be alive still, you have to be at least 107. Naruto said. Mito had a mischievous glint in her eye. Why Naruto, do you want to get rid of your mother that much so you can spend time with your girlfriends? She asked as she feigned sadness. What? No. That's not what I meant and what do you mean by girlfriends? He asked. He had clearly heard the S, which meant plural. Exactly what I said, I saw it in my vision. But I'm not going to say it who she sang out to him. It seems you've gone senile in your old age he muttered. What was that? She asked him sweetly. A bit too sweetly. Nothing. He said quickly. HMPH, anyways, to answer your question I'm in Uzumaki. She told him. Naruto waited for her to explain more apparently that was it. So you're saying that because you're in Uzumaki, that allowed you to survive? He repeated, making sure he heard right. That's correct, we Uzumaki are very hard to kill and something like old age wouldn't outright kill me. A lesser person would have died though. She told her son. Disbelief was written across his face, but if his mother believed it then who was he to say it differently? It should be even harder for you to die since you not only inherited my genes from the Uzumaki clan but that of the Senju clan from your father as well. You should be nigh indestructible to most if not all physical attacks and pain. She said happily. I see. Naruto said. You don't believe me? She asked him. No, I believe you. Let's change the subject, why did Kushina have my scroll? He asked, really wanting to know this. Mito just blinked, I gave her that scroll she lightly hit herself atop her head. What? He yelled out. Mito bopped her son on the head, don't raise your voice to me Naruto, I may have made a mistake, but I am still your mother and I can still give you a spanking. She threatened. Naruto shrunk a bit and grumbled something about it being unfair that she could still do that, he was a young adult dammit. When I gave her that scroll I thought it was a different one with a few techniques from our clan. You should have seen her Naruto, poor child, leaving behind your home and family, only to find out a few years later it was destroyed. She said. He calmed down a bit at that. I grieved alongside her as we were both safe while our clansman died. She asked me to teach her and I did, I began with Genjutsu and then gave her the scroll which I thought held some Suiton jutsus. She lied. She knew exactly which scroll she had given to Kushina, but her son didn't need to know that. She wanted both teens to fall for each other naturally, if she had told him she was one of the girls he was supposed to be together with in the future, well, things would be really awkward between them. It was also at least part of the future she had wanted to see come true. If not for herself and her clan then for the two of them and the others. Plus, being united they would stand a better chance at whatever threatened the village and the world when it came. Naruto had listened to his mother and had remained silent before sighing, it seems he was doing that a lot in the last few hours. I see. Thank you then. He said calmly. Mito was surprised, what did he mean? If you had not given her that scroll and had she not opened it, then she may have possibly been in Kumo a few hours ago. He told his mother. What? His mother shouted out. Naruto nodded and began to explain what had happened. His mother grimaced to think that her doing what she did had saved the girl a terrible fate. But she's okay now, she even introduced me to her best friends, Mikoto, Yui, and Konan. Along with her and Minato, I now have 5 new friends. He said happily. I'm glad to hear that son. She smiled. He nodded. What do you plan to do now? She asked. Well, the next few weeks are going to be spent with you and the others, we have so much catching up to do. After that, whenever you wish to transfer the Kikbi I will be ready for it. That's all I have for now. He admitted. I'm glad, do you have any idea how many birthdays and holidays we need to celebrate? She said in mock seriousness. Naruto laughed, it seemed she had become a bit less stern as she got older. Another question soon popped into her head, what about the village? Are you going to go on missions for Hiruzen? He will ask you no she said. I know he will and I already informed him of how I plan on doing that, only if he truly does need me will I answer. If it's nothing serious then he will choose someone else. He told his mother. I see. Mito was glad her son had said something, but she felt it wouldn't be long until an Anbu came knocking on their door. Well, we might as well enjoy our time together before anything important comes up. Come on, your room awaits. She chirped. Naruto followed up after his mother towards his room. It was good to be home. A few days later. Naruto's eye twitched, he didn't think he would be back here so soon. What is the problem Hiruzen? He asked. Look, don't get annoyed at me Naruto, this isn't a mission. It's an introduction. He told the Senju. To who? He asked the old man. Hiruzen smiled now, why to your new team of course. He told Naruto. Wa Naruto exclaimed. Before you begin to question my sanity, this is all in the paperwork. Let me ask you, did you ever get promoted beyond the rank of genin before you left? He asked his friend. Naruto frowned, no. He grumbled out. He could already see where this was going. Then you can see why I have to do this. Hiruzen said. But the strength levels will be far too mismatched if you place me on a team Naruto tried to reason. Ah well if that's all you're worried about then I have the perfect team for you. You won't be meeting your other 2 teammates yet as one is graduating soon while the other is getting private tutoring. But be relieved to know that they are very strong for their age. Maybe not to your level, but for this generation they are. Explained Hiruzen as he wanted the graduate to get used to the village before he had assigned her when she had come in a few years ago, the other was in very capable hands. Naruto sighed, fine, but how long must I remain a genin? He asked. Well, we have a Chunin exam coming up in our village in a few months, perhaps until then, who knows. Or you may get a field promotion when you and your team are out on missions. Hiruzen said. Naruto quirked to eyebrow Chunin exams. Naruto asked confused. Hiruzen had forgotten that those didn't come into play after he had been sealed, so he explained what the exams were and how they worked. A replacement for war. A very good idea by my uncle Tobirama Naruto said. Hiruzen agreed with him on that. Will we be doing D-rank missions? He asked dreading the answer from Hiruzen. Please let it be a no. Only for a few months don't give me that look. He told the Senju who was making a face. Your teammates will need experience before they go on the tougher assignments. He told Naruto. Very well then Hiruzen. Who have you chosen to be our sensei? He asked Hiruzen. I'm glad you asked. said Hiruzen with a very big smile. Naruto saw the smile, and now he was a bit eager to see who it was, perhaps Tsunade or the other Sannin, Orochimaru. Naruto, I would like you to meet a man whose fame and power are respected and feared the world over, a man who overshadows the Sannin and the man who will be your future sensei. Come in, called Hiruzen, as the door opened to reveal a man. Naruto turned around as the door fully opened to reveal a smiling man with white silver hair with an impressive build. He was impressed, the Senju could feel the power rolling off of the man, he was easily one of the most powerful shinobi he had ever seen. True, he may not hold power comparable to his father, Madara or Tobirama, but he was close enough to that of Hiruzen and far above that of the Sannin. Naruto, I want to introduce you to the Konoha no Shiroi Kiba Konoha's White Fang, Haddock Tsukumo. Hiruzen said to his friend with a smile on his face. What if Naruto inherits Hashirama powers and abilities? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.